Boom. Hey, folks, how is everyone doing? It's a Monday. I see people are starting to make Rob comments, which, come on, that's entirely inappropriate. I was only a couple of minutes late, and that was because I had to fiddle around with my very new headphones. I think they're going to be really awesome for this. They're just, they take some getting used to. They're a little fiddly to put in. I don't know if you can see them. They're right there. So I've got some better in-ear headphones, and that'll enable me to do things like wear silly hats sometimes. So that I hope will be an improvement. Normally, like if I wanted to put on a hat, I had to sort of fiddle around with those over-ear headphones. So hopefully these ones will work better. And the good news is they are quite fancy. They're hard to notice unless you know they're there. So I see people saying, so we can see the hair in all of its majestic glory. Yeah, the other thing is that my hair often got sort of messed up around the earpiece. So yeah, that was not ideal. I see. I should have brought the cowboy hat in the room because it's actually in the other room. So, but that's, I think, a big help. Where's everyone coming, or where's everyone logging in from? It's and what are people drinking? I've got this to try. So that's one of the things. Ooh, I love this idea. Would pay money to see Ian touch a Van de Graaff static generator. I'm gonna have to go to like a science world and try that out, because that I haven't done since I had like short hair, and now I bet it's gonna be epic. I will have to see if I can get my wife to film that. So I love that idea. All right, and I see North Carolina lemon water, iced tea in muggy, sweaty Florida. Fair enough. Iced tea in Indiana, lots of iced tea. Texas with lemonade, nice. Ooh, Olaf from Ecuador. That's quite the distance there. Angry pepper soda, yep. We'll see if it's any good. Glad to see Ian having lemonade and vodka, nice. Northern Minnesota and tea, good stuff. I would not like to be Ian's stomach. I treat it badly sometimes. Massachusetts, I think, and ginger root beer. Ooh, nice. That is awesome. Oh, Nikki Crayon saying, oh no, my membership expired. I'm in Illinois and I'm drinking ice water. Ice water is excellent. It's been a little too hot here, although it's also raining. So that's going to be muggy in a bit. Good day, Ian. Coffee, Gulwa, South Australia. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Lucky beer. If you don't know Lucky, it's a Vancouver Island beer, and it's actually pretty decent. I mean, it's a cheap beer, but I like it for doing leather work. I really like a good Lucky because it is it's good enough that I'll have one or two as I'm working, and not so good that I'll have 4 or 5. That's kind of how I describe it. Florida A&W root beer, nice. What about your Canada cowboy hat? Is that in the office? I'm not sure where that is, but it's not in the room with me. I don't actually have any of my hats. So Los Angeles, my alchemy husband is going to make me something. Is it a cocktail? Yes, it is. Awesome. Rosalind from Norway. That I miss Norway. I visited Norway once. Once. I actually did a semester in Norway. I really enjoyed Norway. Norway is expensive, and but it's lovely. I was in Oslo most of the time, and I will say one of the things that was really interesting is so I'm in Oslo and I'm meeting all these people, and people were saying, oh, I'm sorry, my English is so awful. And their English was amazing, like perfect English, and the Norwegian accent is just really, it's an awesome accent. It's kind of got this lilting sound to it. It's really awesome. So Am I Norwegian? Well, sort of. My grandmother came from Norway, so I've got some Norwegian in me. But I don't know if I count as Norwegian. Um, I should try to find some of my childhood pictures because for the Norwegians in the chat, there are pictures of me in a bunad, or I hope that's the correct pronunciation. So just think of how ridiculous that is as a small kid there. Um, I tried to try this. I bet Ian would try Norwegian Hakarl, shark fermented in its own urine. I tried to find it. I could not find it at all. So I was just unable to give that a try. Lady Draconis, thank you very much for the 5 gifted memberships. That's much appreciated. So what other backgrounds besides Norwegian? I think a lot of it is sort of Alberta prairie farmers. So there's like French and Dutch and so forth, but mostly, I guess the place I've got the most connection to is really Norway. That's where I've got a lot of the, that's where a lot of my family is from. That's where a lot of my sort of background is from. The family stories are Norwegian. So, yeah. I see. Yay, you must have been precious in your national garb. So cute. Happy almost 17th of May. Yeah, I mean, when I talk about like, hey, I was wearing a bunad, you could tell that that's definitely sort of a connection there. So yeah, that's correct. Bunad, 17th of May. We'll all be wearing them. I don't have a set that fits me. I don't even have the kids set that I used to that I wore when I was a kid. But I would love to try that. I'd love to get another set sometime, but they're expensive. Like, holy crap, are they expensive? There's a spicy ice cream out of North Carolina that requires a waiver, a grain of rice taste test, and another taste test to be allowed to buy a scoop. I want to try that. I see Runkel sounds very German. There's actually a Castle Runkel in Luxembourg. It's spelled differently, but it's a Castle Runkel, and the different spellings are basically just the same, same sort of scene. So, yep. And I see Nikki Crayon saying, I can only stay till 8, EDB doing a behind the scenes. I will not fault anyone for going to check that out. But if you can, swing by afterwards. All right. Yeah, Runkel is, I believe, how that one is spelled, the Castle Runkel. So I have a very bad dental appointment on the 17th of May. What is the 17th of May? I think I can't remember the Norwegian national holiday that is, but yeah. I see traditional garb made well is expensive. You bet it is. So yep, it's a lot of cost to that. All right. So it's been an interesting week, and I guess the most interesting thing on that one is that right now the Canadian government is trying to rush things ahead to ban some firearm stuff, and that is that's going to be unfortunate because what they're trying to do is basically cut off all of the debate and all of the discussion. They want to limit it to 20 minutes on each amendment. And I can tell you, and this is for Bill C-21, the gun bill. They have a ton of amendments. They want to expand the scope of the bill to a broad aspect. And they want to, again, limit amendment discussion to 20 minutes for each one. And that's across all the parties. Now, that to me is extremely concerning because a lot of these things are things that should very much be discussed. Some of these things are extremely concerning, particularly given the effect that they will have on a large number of people. And sorry, I've got some snacks here. Mm. I should also note I've got some champagne, but it's not because I'm celebrating anything other than getting it out of the fridge. My wife and I bought a bottle of, it's not champagne, it's sparkling wine, but you get the idea. We bought this to celebrate something. I can't remember what. And then life came up and we weren't able to actually have a sit down celebration. So because of that, we had this bottle sitting in our fridge for a long time. So we decided to celebrate getting it out of the fridge. So it feels like the wrong drink for what's going on. But yeah, we just were like, we don't have room for this anymore. I see the Conservatives will repeal once they gain power. They'll only be able to repeal it if they get a majority. If they don't have a majority, I don't think any of the other parties will go along with it. And I see we can only hope the Governor General vetoes it. The Governor General won't veto it. For the people in the States who don't sort of understand the Canadian weirdness. So officially, the head of state is the king, formerly the queen. I was about to say the queen, but officially that's the head of state. And so the Governor General acts as the king's representative. And so in theory, all of our laws require the approval of the king. And that is done by the Governor General. Now, in actual practice, this is basically a formality. The Governor General just signs everything that is put to them, because if they don't, we're going to have a constitutional crisis. There's going to be a battle over that. So the Governor General is not going to veto it, and quite frankly, it's just not going to happen. We have the king sort of in name only in Canada, but yeah. So it's not going to happen, unfortunately. See, did anyone watch the coronation? I didn't. I'm not a big fan of the idea of the monarchy. I apologize to the people who are, but I just kind of go, it's not for me. So I see that. Can the Senate stall it for a bit? It's going to end up getting pushed through. They're trying to push this through as much as they can. Now, let's talk about some of the progress that's been made, because some of the things that have changed on this have been positive. One of them is that airsoft has been taken out of the bill. So that is a good thing, because it means that at this point, airsoft is at least temporarily safe. We may see it pushed through via an order in council, and but right now airsoft has been protected for at least a little bit longer. So that's our first positive step. The next sort of, I want to say positive, but it's really just less awful step, is that the ban on various semi-autos, it'll be a ban on just about all semi-autos that get made going forward, but the ban that they're pushing through is only going to apply to newly manufactured, newly made guns. So what that means is that there's going to be a whole bunch of guns on the market, which are going to be expensive. Yeah, it's going to be less bad than it could have been, because it doesn't require like turning in all of these guns yet. But that's sort of that aspect. Now, I expect they're going to turn around and issue orders in council to ban a bunch of the guns that are still on the market. One of the very concerning things is an amendment we haven't seen yet. And that is an amendment to ban rifle magazines that can take more than 5 rounds. And now currently, rifle magazines that can take more than 5 rounds are already banned. But there are some exceptions. The exceptions right now are for magazines intended for non-semi-automatic firearms. So a magazine that's for a bolt action, like a Lee Enfield, is legal. So this will change all of that. Also, magazines intended for 22 caliber or any rimfire, but rimfire is small caliber firearms. Any of these small caliber firearms, the magazines are not limited, even if it's semi-automatic. So that means that you can shoot like a 10-22 and, with a 10 round magazine, which, I mean, when you think about it, a 22 caliber firearm is, it's not terribly lethal. I've seen a lot of people shot with a 22 and not a single one of those was a homicide. All of those were just people who were shot with a 22. I would rather be shot with a 22 than stabbed. So, place like location for location, I would rather be shot with a 22 caliber firearm than stabbed. If I had to pick between the two of them. So now I'd prefer not to be either. Both of those things are bad, but 22s are not super lethal, and that's why that is, that's why that exception is there. Now, this is going to have some huge impact because, for instance, the Ruger 1022 uses an interesting rotary magazine, and that rotary magazine is not something that you can block up to prevent it from having, to limit its caliber. So that's awkward. And Ang Taurus, thank you very much for 20 gifted memberships. That's much appreciated. And I've got a super chat in the queue here that I'll get to. Talia E, hot cider, stormy day, so I'm cold, and finishing a pair of shoes, attaching the uppers to the soles. Thanks for keeping us company on Monday nights. Talia, if you're on my Twitter, please send me a picture of the shoes. I would love to see that. I do leather work, and I've always wanted to try making shoes, to try making a pair of shoes. They're just tough. And I was under the impression that this was mainly targeting pin to 5 round magazines, like requiring magazine chopping. Yeah, they've said that they want to make it so that they can't be reversed, but that doesn't, I mean, that's already the case. It's supposed to be a pretty permanent, pretty permanent change there. All right. And I see Trisha G noting on, in 2020, my friend in Toledo, Ohio police officer was shot with a 22 and killed while on duty, went in just under his armpit, missing his vest, and was killed. I'm sorry to hear that. But I mean, a 22 can kill you, but it's not exactly the most lethal. People have been killed with a strike to the head from a hammer. People have been killed with all sorts of things. It's just less likely to kill you. So, and would I consider an attack with a 22 to be assault with a deadly weapon, or is a 22 too wimpy? I mean, deadly weapon isn't really a criteria in Canada, but I mean, you might be able to get an attempted murder or you might not. It would depend on circumstances on that. And this is worth noting. People have been killed with rubber shotgun rounds. Yep. Question, is gun violence so bad in Canada as it is in some places in the US? Not as bad. Canada typically is less violent, and it's less violent on all scores. Canada has, fewer stabbings, it has fewer shootings, it has fewer everything, and a large part of it is that the main predictor for violence is just the society itself. Typically, you will have less violence if you have less of the stuff that is the preconditions for violence, and that means things like less Less poverty, less income inequality, less of that kind of desperation. And also, if you have more, just more safety, more of this stuff. So um, it's a problem. We should also look into drug legalization because a lot of the violence is around that black market. But I know that's an unpopular thought here. Um, Hello, Graceful Answers Ministries. Nice to see you. So, I see less drugs, and I mean the thing is that you're not going to eliminate drugs. What you can do, however, is eliminate the black market for them. And what we've seen in the past, there's a lengthy history of these black markets. Alcohol sales used to have tremendous violence associated with it. Rum runners would get into fights with each other, with the police, with all sorts of things, with Tommy guns, with various other sorts of things. And as a result of that, what we saw is that when we legalized alcohol, that went away. I can't tell you the last time that I saw that, one liquor store or liquor distributor got into a gunfight with another. I visited a distillery when I was in Texas, and it was quite a pleasant experience. I got to sit down with them. I had a very pleasant experience, and I really enjoyed the chat. I'd actually love to go back there. I'm kind of envious because Uncivil's going back there, but it's just like I was not at risk of being shot. There was nobody was running around with a Tommy gun waiting to defend themselves against anything else. So yeah. And I see Susie Q. How are the Canadian gun laws different from the US? That is an excellent question. And the problem with answering it is that the US also has a wide range of gun laws. The US has a huge range. So, but in Canada, you need a license to get a gun. I've got a firearms license in my wallet, which is sitting over there. And I'm not going to show the license because then somebody could try to, manipulate it. But, you need a license, which means you get basic testing. And it also rules out all of the criminals because the criminals don't bother getting a firearms license. They have to go through a background check, and they will actually bounce your application they'll bounce your application if if you've got a record, if you're associated with various groups. So yeah, you need a firearms license. We call it the PAL or the RPAL. It's actually always just the possession and acquisition license, but the RPAL, like your possession and acquisition license, can have different designations on it. So if you're allowed to have restricted firearms, we call that an RPAL for restricted PAL. We have various restrictions on magazine size. We have, and the magazine size restrictions are probably silly. Criminals don't worry about it. But all they do is they interfere with my ability to practice, practice on 3-gun and so forth. But I think the licensing makes sense. I know that's a bit controversial in the gun community in Canada, but I think the licensing makes sense. Is there a big black market for guns then? Yes. I can tell you it's not that difficult to get an illegal gun. And I can say that if I've had people try to offer me an illegal gun while I was just in the bar. So it's a complicated thing there. Now, I mean, there aren't really good solutions, but people ask, what do you do about school shootings? The FBI actually put out a report on this, and I think that everything in that report is good. It talks about how to identify people with those kinds of inclinations, how to make interventions. All of that is fantastic. So yeah, people are saying, of course that happened to you. I can tell you how it happened. I was sitting there talking to a couple of friends, also lawyers, and I was explaining gun law to them, and I was talking about guns. And this guy nearby overheard me talking about guns. So when I got up to go to the bathroom, he also got up and went, followed me into the bathroom in order to try to sell me this little handgun. I was like, yep. And yeah, this is the other thing. You need references. I've been a reference for a friend who got his gun license. I had to declare that he's a nice guy. He is, and got his license. Can you purchase more than one gun per license? Yes. Once you have the license, you can buy just guns. They don't put a limit on it. So I've got a lot of guns. I will say, I'm over 50. I don't know how many. I actually haven't counted. He offered you a piece in a bar bathroom. Yep. He straight up was like, hey, you want to buy this? And I was like, no, I don't. And then he left. So that was an interesting experience because, yeah, I was just like, nah. And yeah. And I see just Ginge saying, seems wild a kid can use a gun but not drive a car. In Canada, you can actually get a gun license before you can get a driver's license. And the reason for that is that sometimes you have families that need to hunt. And so, my dad, when he was a kid, like a little kid, and wait, I'm not over 50. I am 43, just to be clear. I'm not sure why that, I'm not over 50. I have over 50 guns. That's, but my dad, when he was a kid, used to walk to school with a rifle, well, a little rifle shotgun combo gun. I'm actually still trying to get him to give me this gun because I want it for reasons, hunting reasons. But yeah, he used to walk to school with it, and he'd put it up on the hook in the cloakroom there, and then sit and do his classes, and then take it off the hook at the end of the day and walk back. He actually had situations where he actually had situations like at one point he was late to school, and they asked him, why were you late? And the reason why he was late is that on the way to school, he saw a deer, he shot the deer, and then he processed the deer and that made him late. Like he had to field strip this deer and take it back. So that was his experience there. And I see what is it? My RPAL instructor had to remind us that family members are not conjugal partners. Apparently had a very awkward conversation with a past student who had seen the word conjugal before. Yeah. So, and this is a good question. How do you not misplace a gun and bullets with ADHD? I put a lot of effort into being very careful with both my firearms and my ammunition. I am very careful as to how that's all handled. How far north did that kid live? Let me tell you, he lived in a town, and you're gonna laugh because this sounds really stupid. Okay, but this is seriously the name of the town he lived in. It's called Pooscoopy. Now you may think that means Poo Scoopy, and that's not how that's. It's actually Poos, Pouce, accent, coupe, which ends up being pronounced coopy because of anglicizing, Coupe accent. It is from French, translated or anglicized in its pronunciation. So what it means is cut thumb. Pouce is thumb. Coupe is cut thumb. but it sounds stupid. So that's where he spent a lot of time as a kid. He's got all sorts of fun rural childhood stories, including things like the popular back in his days childhood habit of moving outhouses. So that's that. So yeah. So anyway, it's real rural, but there's a lot of people who had that experience. It's not a city experience, but it is an older rural experience that and I see, is it Métis? I don't know where the naming came from, but this is a great comment. Speaking of Pooh Scoopy, how's your backyard doing? My backyard, I did hire somebody to clean it up. So my backyard is thankfully a little, a little less bad. So, all right. So I think we talked a little bit about the Bill C-21 things. As noted, they're going to ram this through. It's going to be a real issue. Does the town have an In-N-Out? No, because it's Canadian. In-N-Out, I don't think, has any locations in Canada. So, yeah. All right. And yes, we get First Nations communities rely on firearms for subsistence hunting. Absolutely. If you talk to somebody from the reserves, I can guarantee you a lot of those kids shot their first deer or first moose at like 8. Real common, like super common. Lol at hiring a turd scooper. I mean, the thing is, ultimately, it cost me a little bit of money, not a huge amount, but it saved me a whole afternoon of picking up dog poops. Because over the winter, the dogs poop in the snow and it freezes and it just takes forever to, it just takes forever to thaw. And then in the spring, it is awful. And yeah, I don't want to bend over with that, that often. How hard is it to kill a moose? Moose are big creatures, so you want to use a large caliber firearm. I've got a 270 that would probably do, but you might even want to go bigger than that. So this is a good question. So how are the wildfires? The wildfires right now are pretty bad. Right now there's wildfires here in Alberta that have spread a huge, over a huge area. There's a lot of people who are evacuated. I'm not in the evacuation area at this stage, but I could drive 45 minutes to get to them. It's pretty bad. So there's a lot of people who've been displaced. There's a lot of people who have been, where that's a problem. And I see, what are your thoughts on the Lee Enfield rifles possibly being banned? So the Lee Enfield rifle, if you're not familiar, it's an old military rifle, but it's a bolt action rifle. They haven't been used by any military in a long time because they're bolt action. They're, and they're in an obsolete caliber. They're just an old gun. Because they were a popular military rifle and they've now gone to basically surplus, they're a really, really popular hunting rifle. The number of deer that have been taken with a Lee Enfield is huge. They are sufficiently classic that the Lee Enfield appears in a video game that is partially funded by the government of Canada because it's a government of Canada video game. Now I'm blanking on the name. I'm just trying to find it in my Steam list, but my Steam list is long. I'm trying to remember the name of it. The theme of the game is basically that you wander through the Canadian wilderness and try not to freeze to death. I'm just trying to remember, trying to scan through the list here. Why can't I? My brain is having a problem with this. Yes, here it is. The Long Dark. That is the game. And people are saying the government funded a video game. Yes, in part. It notes that it's funded in part by a Government of Canada grant. It's actually a pretty good game. I really like The Long Dark. It's a game where so basically the plot line of The Long Dark is that something has happened. You're out in the cold, and it's knocked out electricity. All of the electricity is out. And so you're wandering around in the frozen Canadian North, and your main enemy is it's freaking cold. That's the main obstacle that you have to deal with. The next obstacle is that you have to find food. And so one of the things that you may end up using in that is a Lee Enfield rifle, because it's such a classic Canadian gun. Let me just see if I can share my screen here, just to pull this up. Where is it? There we go. So you can see that's a Lee Enfield. That's what that's intended to be. So your main enemy is just Canada. That's the villain in The Long Dark. But it's a Government of Canada, game. It's actually really kind of peaceful. It's kind of quiet. It's really nice. And being in the Canadian North is a horror narrative all in of itself. I mean, I am not the greatest outdoorsman, but I'm pretty comfortable in the outdoors. And I can tell you that being outside in the level of cold that they have here is, it'll kill you real fast. So, yep. And this is a really solid point. A lot of Métis, Inuit, and First Nations rely on the Lee Enfield, so it's almost an attack on them directly. The Lee Enfield and the SKS, I would guess, represent about, possibly like 75, 80% of the guns on reserves. They're super, super common. Super common. So the number of Indigenous people who will end up getting locked, who will end up getting criminalized out of this would be tremendous. Always a bad season of Alone when they go to Canada. Alone seems kind of silly, but I would love to do an episode of Alone. I wouldn't win. I will just tell you that right now. I would not win. But I think it would be fun. I think that would be fun. So, are all the doors in the game unlocked? Lots of them are, and lots of them are just frozen solid. Lee Enfield rifles were really common in rural Australia too. Not surprising. Another Commonwealth country. So, yeah. Runkle, my smart TV just died and I blame you. Your old computer monitors didn't want to die alone. My monitors are fine. Like when I said I got new monitors, these things. These are monitors. So, yeah. Do you have hollow points in Canada? Excellent question. Yes, we do. Hollow points are required for hunting, where if you want to hunt most game, you need a hollow point. I cannot shoot a deer without, using a hollow point round. That would be a serious offense. As a Canadian, why on earth would I play a game like that? I'd want to escape reality playing a game. It's a fun game. So, it's a really fun game. Yeah, all of the Indigenous would be effed with the new bans. If they go through as is, I can tell you that there will be a long tail, a long path of Indigenous people going to jail for not realizing that the stuff that they owned for years is now banned. So you got in-ear monitors. Yeah, you can wear the cowboy hat without an issue now. Exactly. That's why I got them. Why hollow point? I know nothing, Jon Snow. So hollow point ammunition, when it enters, a body or whatever else, will expand. And so the diameter of it increases. That causes more sort of wounding, which tends to cause the animal to, die faster, which is what you want. You want, you want an animal to, to be taken humanely. Whereas ball ammunition tends to go through an animal without expanding and may, in fact, cause much less damage. Now, that's fine if the goal is we want soldiers to live and recover later. But it's not so fine if you want an animal. Yeah, it's a rite of passage in the First Nations to hunt food for the family and the elders. Absolutely. I can just say it's tremendously important to a lot of people. It's really significant. And, it really, matters a huge amount. Think field point versus broadhead in archery. Yep, absolutely. You don't want to just torture the animal. You want it to, be killed humanely. No animal suffering. Absolutely. Snow Magnum, thanks for the YouTube membership. And Canonical Heat, thank you for the member chat there. Thank you from a fellow neurospicy person. Love your stream. Thank you very much. And thank you as well for 20 gifted memberships. Wow, thank you. Do you anticipate to defend a lot of cases and clients if this bill passes and people get convicted? I mean, a lot of people are going to get charged. It's going to make a lot of defense lawyers very wealthy. That is the case. So self-defense bullets, hollow points are also used for self-defense. They're used by police. They're used by basically everyone that isn't target shooting. You don't necessarily need them for target shooting, although lots of people do target shooting with them anyway, or military. The military doesn't use them basically because of old convention. And that convention probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense now, but there it is. Also, tracking a wounded animal is a pain in the butt, so it dying quickly is more ideal. Yeah, I mean, once you, at least in Alberta, once you shoot an animal, you have a responsibility to then, to deal with that animal, which means you got to track it. You got to make sure that it's actually been dealt with humanely. And, that can be a long effort. So you ideally want it to just drop right away. I actually am replacing the 270 ammo that I'm using because the 270 ammo I'm using, even though it's expanding ammunition, I was not getting reliable expansion out of it. And so I'm going to replace that with something else because, All right. So we're going to try this ghost pepper soda. We'll see. Ghost pepper is not bad. Actually, I'm going to finish this one. It's pretty solid. Are there concerns with lead poisoning from hollow point fragments? You shouldn't get a whole lot of lead from it. I mean, there's some lead, but you won't get a whole lot of it. So, Little Lamb, when you go on your first hunt, this is not a universal tradition, but it is, a tradition in some communities. And you make your first kill, you get bloodied, you are painted with the blood of the kill on your face. It's a big thing in rural Scottish communities. Yeah, different places have different sort of traditions around that. Is the Geneva Convention requirement of FMJ supposed to encourage more living casualties that don't die? Basically, the Geneva Convention on that was because at the time, hollow points weren't really known to be a big thing. And so it was kind of a novel idea at the time. So they banned it. And I don't think they ever updated that. But now you get a lot of situations where there's, that is a potential benefit to it. A soldier that's wounded is out of the fight. But yeah. I see. What about Swedish Mausers? Are they legal in Canada? Yes. Some Indigenous drink a little bit out of it. Yep. I've also heard about people, about people who, consume certain organs, that kind of thing. And this is a good comment here. My house rule is you take it as game, you eat it, period. This is not just a house rule. This is actually the law. This is legally required. You shoot an animal, you are not allowed to waste the game meat. So if you shoot a deer, you got to eat it, or you've got to make sure that somebody else eats it. It's so even if you're going out going, hey, I'm gonna shoot a trophy animal, and some people do, like they're like, hey, I want to get the sort of biggest animal I can. It's still getting eaten. It's entirely getting eaten. I've not gone for trophies. I eat as much of it as I can. So awesome. Graceful Answers Ministry, welcome back to membership. Much appreciated. Yeah, and Alberta rules, you can't sell it, you can only give it away. Yep, that is also the case. You can donate the meat, yes. Homeless shelters and so forth do end up donating a fair bit of, people donate meat to them. So how many rounds of 223 do you have right now? I can't believe the cost has gone up so much. I don't know how many rounds I've got, but quite a few. And plenty of people are more than happy to take the meat off your hands. Yeah. If you've got extra meat, I will happily take it off your hands. So do most hunters take their kills to a butcher? Or do they know how to process it? A mix. So a mix. Apple Silver saying, are you up to doing some wild boar predation with me? They're getting bad in Alberta, Saskatchewan. I am. So I am. Do you ever get meat from an animal that tastes just bad? People shoot skunks, but you don't eat them. There's lots of animals that are not sort of eating animals. So, yeah. All right. I see. Oh, I'll fly out and help with boars. Yep. All right. And I see that there's a verdict in the Letitia Stotch trial. I haven't been following that one, I'm afraid. So I just don't know. I don't know the details on that one. What about coyotes? Coyotes are mostly not eaten. They're predators. Predators don't typically taste good, but people do often, shoot them just because they harass wildlife. Do I have any gun lawyers to recommend in Calgary? I think Greg Dunn is out there, and he's pretty solid. So, yeah. All right. Venison and spaghetti is good, or venison spaghetti, awesome. Guilty times 4, life in prison, no parole. Yep. Yeah, and they also eat house pets. If you, they will go after dogs, they'll go after cats, they'll go after all sorts of things. But all right, let's look at some other stories, because I've got some people who are asking about what else is going on here in Canada. So let's talk about some stuff. Let me just see if I can bring this up here. All right. So, this is a story. So, and I see whatever happened with De Ruyter. He's still waiting for trial. So still pending. So that's going to be a while. Him and his wife. Question: does it count if it is all used for feeding pets? You are not permitted to use game meat to feed your pets. That is considered wasting it. Oh, and I'm being told I got to swoop. All right. So basically what's happened here is one of the members of parliament, Mr. Chong, had determined or had discovered later, eventually, that there was a threat being made by the Chinese government against his family, which the government didn't reveal. They didn't indicate what that was. So the U.S. or the Canadian government then had to decide what they were going to do about this diplomat, who they said was involved in this scheme. And what they ultimately ended up doing is they declared them persona non grata. They, PNG'd them. And the reason why this is important is that there's actually rules about what you can do to diplomats. Diplomats, you've all heard of diplomatic immunity, I assume. Chat, you've heard of diplomatic immunity? Yes? No? So, I mean, it's a common sort of movie plot, but diplomatic immunity is basically there to prevent people from, bullying or threatening or otherwise, manipulating foreign diplomats. And that's via the Vienna Convention. And I'll just sort of read the language there. It's, you've got a requirement to follow the laws, but you can't be prosecuted unless your country agrees that you can be prosecuted. And that happens sometimes. If you commit serious offenses, the country that sends you may waive diplomatic immunity on your behalf, which can be a real big problem, right? So if you've got situations where, you've got a diplomat with immunity and they commit something like, maybe they run someone over, their host country might say, we're going to allow them to be prosecuted. But China's not going to do that. So we got two options at that point. You can either let it go, or you can say, we are rejecting this person as a diplomat. They are no longer allowed to be here as a diplomat, which means they got to flee. They got to go home. So this diplomat is going to have to get sent back home, and that's the only punishment. That's the penalty. See, diplomatic immunity should be limited to misdemeanors. Yes and no. The reason why it's broad is that there was a lengthy history of situations where countries would basically make up a crime in order to punish a diplomat. They would frame them potentially for, maybe even serious crimes, right? And so this means that you can't really frame a diplomat. So all you can do is kick them out. But there have been some very controversial moments. A kid was knocked down and killed in England by a woman who took diplomatic immunity as an American diplomat. Yep. And that's the downside, is that sometimes serious crimes can go unpunished. So it can be a problem. So there's all sorts of limits as to when diplomatic immunity or immunity applies and when it doesn't. But in this case, it pretty clearly does. So that's all they can do to him is just kick him out. And they will send another diplomat. And now, the other thing to note is that because of diplomatic immunity, diplomat is a very common profession for espionage. Because, I mean, typically a lot of countries will execute spies that they find. So, yeah, that, yeah. And so I'm just checking here. I see that we've got 1,000 people watching. We have 600 likes. So if you haven't hit that like button, hit the like button. That would be much appreciated. It does help. And I see Brentwood Chic. Thank you for 10 gifted memberships. Much appreciated. Yeah, the blue diplomatic license plates in DC are notorious. The really bad drivers wind up with Secret Service to drive them around. I've heard of so many people who have so somebody I talked to online is they're disabled and in DC. And they say that one of their biggest annoyances is that people who park in the disabled parking with the diplomatic plates, and there's nothing that can be done about them. So you just sort of live on it. Get to some questions here that I'd flagged here for years. Ian, how old were you when your hair started turning silver? About 16, 15. Jennifer Velasquez say, Ian, say Michelada or Michelada. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. Hello from Texas. That one's a weird word, and I don't know how it's pronounced properly. Do Canadian First Nations people have a separate self-governance like the supposed U.S. First Nation? That is complicated, but the answer is largely no. Shepard, if you have a PAL, can you wear body armor at any time in Alberta or only when you are shooting or hunting? At any time. I could right now go into the other room, get my body armor. Actually, I think it's in my closet here. So I could go in, get that, and then just, throw it on just for giggles. So, yeah. Disabled parking, who are these people and how do they become diplomats? I mean, you get people who are diplomats, they've got immunity, they can't be given a ticket, so they just don't care. They'll just park wherever. And military rounds designed to wound. Dead soldier is a source of extra ammo. Wounded soldier needs to be treated, sustained. Yep. This is a good point on the military doctrine. So the military doctrine stuff is that generally the military doesn't necessarily want to kill people. And the reason why is because, I mean, wounded soldiers are more expensive. They're more of a hassle. They're a logistical problem. It's a difficult situation. Dead soldiers are easy to ship back. So that's it's kind of cynical and it's kind of, rough, but it is true. So wounded soldiers are much better from a military tactical perspective than anything else. So that's part of why they also don't necessarily worry that much about that. All right. So, yeah, some people wanted me to talk about that one. I don't know that it's the most exciting story, but it did take the government a long time to decide that was something they wanted to do. Let's talk about some scammy things. There we go. So, now we've got some scammy things going on, and we'll just talk about how people get ripped off. And that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that if you are, if you're having a choice as to whether to injure or kill the opposing soldiers, tactically injured and taken out of the fight is is kind of the more effective means. All right. So this is just talking about how they made an arrest in what they call the grandparent scam. Now, the grandparent scam isn't always a grandparent scam, but it's a very common line of scam. They're also called emergency scams. And basically, the way this works is they typically target older people. And it's unfortunate because a lot of older people may not have as much resilience or ability to spot these things. And what they do then is they say, hey, oh, and I'm seeing people asking, embiggened. So what they do is they phone up and they say, hey, it's me. I'm your grandchild, or I'm somebody close to you. And very commonly they'll say, I've been arrested. I need money for bail. It's a really common one. I've actually had a few situations where I've gotten people out of a grandparent scam that they were about to get hit by, because I had them, call up and they said, hey, my kid's in custody. They said I need to, have bail, or my grandkid's in custody. How do I do this? And I was like, well, let me walk you through it. And they were like, well, they said to do this and that and the other. And I was like, oh, that's, this is not, your kid's not actually in custody. Or your grandkid's not actually in custody. And they're like, what? And I'm like, how well do you know this grandkid? And they're like, well, I haven't seen them in since they were a little tiny kid. And I was like, yeah. How do you know this is actually your grandkid? Well, they said they are. And it's like, oh, okay, this is sad. So basically at the end of all of that, we were like, you don't need to send them any money. Your kid's not, your grandkid's not in custody. Don't send them any money. But there's various variants of this. They will sometimes say, I'm in the hospital. I've been hurt. They might say, I'm in another country and I'm in trouble. I had my wallet stolen. I need money to get back home. All of these things are possibilities. All of these things are potentials. So, and I see this is a good sort of note here. I'd never fall for that, as everyone in my immediate family knows that I will not bail them out. Fair enough. Yeah, my brother-in-law fell for it and was going to send money. Gladly, my sister stopped him from doing it. So the reason why they give you this emergency story is to shut your brain off. So you stop thinking about it and you just start, you just start reacting. And, you're like, I'm going to save the day. I'm going to be the hero here. I'm going to, all of that. And yeah, it's a real problem. It's getting to be more of a problem because we're seeing them doing things like there's been a few instances of them using AI voices. If you have a voice that is accessible online, like say, if you have a YouTube channel, then they might be able to use that voice and duplicate it in order to, to make it sound like you are the person calling. And they will, this is ugly here. Scammers will call families of deployed soldiers as being from the Red Cross to get the injured soldier home. Army is terrible at telling families how they'd really be notified. Yep. Yeah, and people noting they scammed my grandmother. The bank where she had an account for 40 years talked to her about why she was withdrawing such a large amount of money. She was friends with the bank manager. Hopefully they talked her out of it. And I see... what is it? Another tactic is to phone and pretend to be the police and accuse you of a computer crime. Yep. So, Ian, if you call and ask for money, I should hang up. Yes. My wife and I have a code word, and I'm not going to say what the code word is. But yeah. And this is a good tactic. My mom already has received a couple of these. She says, okay, what is your mom's name? Click. Yeah, it's you got to be really, really careful. Yeah, a friend of mine nearly fell for the soldier thing. I had to stop her. I mean, really stop her from doing it. Yep. I highly suggest a code safe word amongst your family. Yep, absolutely. So you got to be careful with these things. There's a lot of them. And this is a kid who's just 19 who's been accused of this. And charged with fraud over 5,000, possession of property obtained by crime, conspiracy to commit an indictable offense. You got to be, this is a real concern. Another one that I get a lot, IRS calling to say they have a arrest warrant. IRS will never call. I get calls from the IRS saying we have a warrant for your arrest. You must pay, and it's this robotic voice and whatever. So yeah, I love Kit Boga and Scammer Payback. I love those channels too. I've tried to do some of that. I don't know why they can just see right through me when I try to play that. They just they hear something in the tone of my voice and they immediately are like, nope, this guy is not getting scammed. We're hanging up. So, yeah. It's actually pretty solid. The less spicy ones are not good, but the Ghost Pepper and the Nevada Reaper, both of those are actually pretty solid. So I just string them along and waste their time as much as possible. Absolutely. That's a great thing to do. And yeah. Common around here is you miss jury duty and have to pay, which is bunk. Yeah, I mean, the government never wants you to pay a the government doesn't want you to pay a fine over the phone. And also, they're never going to be that convenient. They also don't want you to pay in gift cards or anything like that. So, yeah. A lady that lives at the same retirement home as my mother was almost scammed out of 10 grand, told she would get kicked out of her apartment if she didn't pay. Someone stopped her en route to the bank. Ooh. Yeah. I triggered a scammer simply by asking what the weather was like in Calcutta. Nice. Yeah. Made one guy so mad he swore at me and hung up on me. That's fun. Yeah. That's good practice. Jennifer DeToit, thank you very much for the $1 super chat there. Much appreciated. All right. So yeah, it's I just wanted to give people some warning on that one. It's unpleasant. It's a risky one. Now we're going through some Canadian news here. And we will talk a little bit more about that. I see. Wait, Ian, you get scam calls from the IRS that they have a warrant for your arrest in Canada? Like they call Canada and say the IRS wants to arrest you? Does Canada have an IRS of its own? Yes, literally they phone me and they say the IRS has a warrant for your arrest. Now, Canada has an equivalent to the IRS, but it's the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency. So when people are calling me saying I'm from the IRS, it's pretty obviously a scam. Like, because why? So, yeah. Lara M., any more giant icebergs or metal balls? Sadly, the news is not quite as funny this week, but we're going to have some amusing stories. We can also talk about this one, which we'll embiggen a bit here. All right. So, judge details why ex-People's Party official avoided jail for Trudeau assault. Now, have you guys heard about this story? Did you follow what was going on this one? We got a picture of the event here. Oh, and I'm being told I got a swoop. Swoop. So, what happened? Trudeau is getting on a bus. You can see it here getting on a bus. And some guy threw gravel at Trudeau. And when I say gravel, I mean like little tiny pebbles. It hit Trudeau, and Trudeau wasn't fussed because it was little tiny gravel, right? It was pretty minor stuff. So, nevertheless, he got charged with assault with a weapon, to wit, gravel. And you can see the little, bits of gravel in the air, right? Little tiny bits. So, he's being a jerk, but he's not really endangering anybody, right? It's not like he yeeted a great big stone or anything like that. And so they were having a difficult sort of determination here because the guy pled guilty to all of this, and he tried to. The funny thing, he tried to subpoena Justin Trudeau, which actually seems like it makes sense, right? Subpoenaing Trudeau, who's a witness to this, right? But that got quashed. He wasn't allowed to subpoena Trudeau. Ultimately, I think he pled guilty to just simple assault. Yeah, he pled guilty to the lesser charge of simple assault on the day scheduled for his trial. So now, I mean, there would have been a debate as to whether or not the gravel counts as weapons. The definition of weapons includes anything that you use to that could injure, or that you intend to use to injure or intimidate somebody. I don't know that the gravel actually counts here. And I see if Rob shows up, give him control of your swoop. Rob has control of the swoop. I'm pretty sure he's got swoop control. However, Rob is also, I think he's watching John Wick. So, yeah. Oh, and I should get to this. K-Rab noting 2 great channels to follow to see these scams in action are Jim Browning and Kit Boga. Yeah, I enjoy both of those channels. I say I'm not condoning this, but throwing something small and not harmful at Trudeau is appealing at times, but you can't. It would be an assault. So, yeah. Nikki, send me that article on Twitter, because yeah. All right. So the prosecution wanted a sentence of 30 days in jail for this assault. 30 days in custody is what they wanted, which, is not a huge amount of time, and it's in line with some of the other sentences people have gotten. But it still seems like a little much, right? It still seems like a little strict overall, because at the end of the day, Trudeau wasn't hurt, and he wasn't in a position to really be hurt. And the defense position was basically that this was an impulsive act by kind of a guy who's a bit of a jerk ass. And I don't disagree that he should be arrested and charged. I just think it's minor. That's kind of the thing on that one. So the guy's a jerk, certainly, but it's a question of how much of a jerk is he. So the defense side wanted probation. Ultimately, what the judge decided on was to give him a sentence of 90 days of house arrest. Or sorry, 60 days of house arrest. I've seen, or 60 or 90. Yeah, 90 days of house arrest, which is actually more serious than what the Crown was asking for. Because on a conditional sentence, house arrest is treated as a jail sentence. So he is doing 90 days of house arrest followed by a year's worth of probation. So in terms of the 90 days of house arrest, he's just going to be basically unable to leave. Typically, those house arrest conditions, I don't have the full conditions. I couldn't manage to get them all. But he's also got to do 80 hours of community service, so that's an additional penalty there. But typically, you'll have like a period of the day, like a period of the week. It's usually like one day a week that you can go and shop for the necessities of life. So necessities of life is, food, clothing, gas might be necessities of life, but like you probably can't go to like the gun store or like the liquor store. Usually people have restrictions that say that they can't drink or do drugs while they're on that. Usually they'll have restrictions that, on that sort of thing. So it's less serious than jail in a lot of ways. It's less unpleasant than jail. It's still not a lot of fun. Sometimes you can go and do work. Sometimes you're allowed to leave the house for work, but you have to come immediately home. So, yeah. And I see John Carter saying Wick 4 was not very good. It looked more like an arcade game at times. I enjoyed the heck out of John Wick 4. I'll just say that. I enjoyed the heck out of it. Let me just see if I can somebody's saying, can we put the link in the chat? Let me see if I can do that for you. Link hopefully went into the chat there. Chat, let me know if the link successfully went into the chat. I don't know. There we go. It looks like it made it in. There's sometimes a delay. All right. Now, this is another good point. Man, I've stayed in the house for longer than that just because I can't be bothered putting trousers on. Yup. And sometimes house arrest is defined as... sometimes house arrest allows you to be in like your backyard. And in that case, I mean, I just... I'm like, I'm not that bothered by it. So now, all right. Now, the next thing I see, this is something that was just that Nikki Crayons just provided here. German man rescued from... Oh, wait. I always forget. Swoop. Heck, we'll swoop again. All right. German man rescued from woods after sex game gone wrong. 51-year-old. Hey, good for him. Was discovered bound with rope pantyhose in the Buickburg, might be mispronouncing that, area forest. Apparently a cyclist and hunter heard his screams for help. Fully dressed but firmly bound with ropes and pantyhose over his head atop a deer hunting platform. Deer hunting platform. Oh, I'm being told I got to share the screen. There we go. Sharing the screen. Sorry about that. And I'm being told I got to lower the volume on the swoop. I don't have a good way to do that. I'll try to do that later. All right. He was tied up by a woman he met online. After she'd done so, she received a phone call and fled the woods suddenly. Don't do this, people. If you get, that's not... Here's the thing. Legally speaking, this can create some real problems. Because if you end up... if you tie somebody up like that, you have a responsibility at that point to make sure that they're okay. You could potentially, at least here in Canada, end up in a situation where you end up facing charges of like manslaughter if the guy dies. So, because of the negligence aspect, because of all of that. So, um, yeah, don't do that. Real bad, real bad practice. 51-year-old told officers he had a box cutter on him for such situations. For such situations, what the heck? But seems to have underestimated her abilities to tie him up. Wow. Now, this is Fox News, so who knows if it's accurate, but this just seems ridiculous to me. I'm wondering if this is actually a real story, or especially because I can't find it anywhere else other than on this Fox News site. So I'm wondering about this one. I got some questions. I'm just gonna say, yeah. How often does this happen to this guy? It sounds like more than once. And I see Germans here saying it's a real story. Runkle would have a knife on him too. I will tell you, wouldn't have been me. That's not a good plan. All sorts of bad plans on that one. All right. So let's talk about something else that I think is an entertaining tale of chaos. So here we go. Let me just bring this one. Oh, and I got a swoop. And I see people saying many people carry bondage, or knives and so forth. Yeah, many people carry knives, but I feel like bringing a knife to meet somebody you just met online is also a little weird. Also, might be a little off-putting. I just don't know. Like that, so many parts of that sound like a bad idea. So, but this one is really interesting. Let me pull up the. So, Porsche driver charged for using license plate concealing technology. Um, this one is interesting. And I see, no, as a female, that's required. Yes, but as a guy, women tend not to be as impressed by that. And I see people saying need a new swoop. Maybe I can make a new swoop. All right. So using license plate concealing technology. And they've got a video on this. You want to see the video, chat? I see people saying bigger, please. All right. So let's have a look at this video here, because this is really exciting. And I'm going to switch over the audio so that hopefully you guys can hear it. Which one is the right one here? All right. Can you hear me? Hopefully. Let's have a look. Put it up. Buffering. Did you see that? All right, let's play it again. Put it up. Wow. That is that's some James stuff right there, right? Now I see people saying, "What? Why?" Well, I don't know why. Because like unless you're going to put this down to like avoid speed cameras and so forth, cuz that's that's something. And I see somebody saying, is that pixelated in real life, or is that blocking out the license plate? That is blocking out the license plate. It's not pixelated in real life. So he was charged with obstructing a license plate. Now, I'm wondering if this is, I'm wondering about the laws on this one, because I actually think that they might have. Yeah, and I see people saying that this might be used for avoid pay-by-plate tolls. Yep, it's I think it's really interesting on that one, but I'm just trying to. I'm trying to find the section that says that you can't obstruct your plate. All right, so let's have a look. I'm just pulling this up here. All right. So they've got some details here. Number plate to be kept clean. So this indicates that each number plate shall be kept free of dirt and obstruction and shall be affixed so that the entire number plate, including the numbers, is plainly visible at all times, and the view of the number plate shall not be obscured or obstructed by spare tires, bumper bars, any part of the vehicle, any attachments to the vehicle, or the load carried. And the next is obstruction prohibited. Shall not be obstructed by any device that prevents the entire number plates, including the numbers, from being accurately photographed using a photo radar system. And shall not be obstructed by any device that prevents the entire number plates, including the numbers, from being accurately photographed using a red light system. And the same thing for an electronic toll system. Now, this is, to my mind, interesting because it seems to me that they'd have to prove that he was actually displaying the thing, right? Now I see here, at all times, that blocks view sometimes, only if he actually uses it. Only if he actually uses it. I'm not sure that having the machine installed is necessarily itself an offense, but using it would be. So I don't know if they actually caught him with that on or what the deal is, but yeah, it's that I think is interesting. So I think that's an interesting legal question. I'd love to be this guy's lawyer. Because, well, assuming that it wasn't a situation where he was driving with it down. But if he wasn't driving with this thing down, I would love to be this guy's lawyer. I see he used it in the video and hence crime, self-snitch. I think that video was actually taken by the police. So I think that's the situation there. Could use this legally while parked. No, not while parked. So, yeah. Oh, and I'm just rereading the article. I was rereading it. He was actually using it with the plate blocked. The police thought that it was missing. So, and then they changed their mind on that. So, fair enough. At that point, they've got a good, good offense. I see parked on your property. I think that you're okay parked on your property, but don't take that as legal advice. I'd need to check. That's something I'd need to read through the Highway Traffic Act, and different provinces have different rules as well. It is technically an offense to have it blocked by snow or ice or dirt or mud. I had a police officer at one point pulled me over because I had a leaf stuck to my license plate, and he made me remove the leaf, which I thought was dumb. Like, okay, you pulled me over for the leaf. Why wouldn't you pull off the leaf? But yeah, no, yeah. Now, this, I think, is an excellent point. I can think of several reasons to have that besides legal evasion. I mean, if you don't have to have a plate visible when it's parked on your own property, then if you just had this when it was parked on your own property, that would make sense to me. So, yeah. And I see that is so petty. Yeah, I kind of felt that way as well. So, yeah. And I see member chat from Ohio Palm Mom also threatening arrest for fake back taxes due. That's for the scam aspects. Yep. and here for years. Thank you for 10 gifted memberships. Much appreciated. Mama C, Ian, check the law made to protect LPs in Google Street. I don't know which that one is about. So you'll have to explain that one to me or send me a link, because I don't know what that one's about. And I see that the AP has the same. A few people have sent me the AP story, so it apparently has the exact same aspects there. And just somebody sent me a highly entertaining story that I probably can't share. So that is interesting. All right. So let's just look there. It blocks the plates of cars parked on Google Street View. Interesting. My dad's plate fell off his truck on the way to the scrapyard. They wouldn't process his truck without it, but the MTO wouldn't let it report it as missing without knowing exactly where it was lost. Ugh, that's obnoxious. Gun behind plate, that would be difficult. So apparently they're saying that it's the law that Street View can't have identifying things like plates or street numbers. I thought that was just Google's habit. They blur plates and street numbers and so forth just by their own policies. Oh, Laura M. There is an article on that, and it's a bad article. We'll probably get to it. It's bad. All right. Let's look at what all we're talking about here. Well, let's look at a province behaving badly. So, and I haven't been following the Lori Vallow trial. That's correct. 2-hour mark for the bad article. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And I've got some super chats here to cover. Question: is someone with a black belt in Taekwondo, if I assaulted Trudeau, would that be considered assault with a deadly weapon or just regular assault? Just regular assault, unless you injured him, in which case it would be assault causing bodily harm. Or if you cause more serious injury, it might be aggravated assault. But your hands never become a weapon just because you're good with them. So otherwise, like, you'd have to determine somebody's size, and you'd have to determine their training and all of that. So that would just be silly. And I see Brittany and Alicia, cheers, and it's with the right glass to a diagnosis of attention deficit today. Thank you, Ian, Rob, and EDB. Shout out to the Role of Law and Law and Lumber Discords for all the support the past few months. Cheers. I hope it's helpful to you, because it was very helpful to me. Even just having somebody like to say, hey, this stuff that's going on with you, like, it's an actual thing, right? It's an actual, reading these books where they were just talking about, what it's like to have attention deficit. I was like, wow, that is, it was a big deal to sort of go, this isn't just that I'm broken. This is somebody, somebody else there. Susan, thank you very much for the super sticker there. Actually, I know a former U.S. Marine got in a bar fight and got charged with assault with a deadly weapon because of his training. Not in Canada. The rule in Canada is just, it's assault. Simple. Same thing with boots. Boots don't generally count as a weapon, so long as they're ordinary footwear. Sarah Gruber, my brother was in an altercation with a guy that was a Golden Glove boxer. I don't recommend doing that. That's a bad thing. Knives for hands would not be a weapon. If you had knives for hands, it might be. Like if you were Edward Scissorhands, they would probably say that the scissor attachments are at that point a weapon. Now, I think the really interesting thing, and I have actually had a case that was briefly like this. I had a case where a guy kicked another dude and had a prosthetic foot. And the cops laid the charge as assault with a weapon. And I can tell you the Crown prosecutor, upon looking at the file, the first thing he did, the first action that prosecutor took on the file was to knock that charge down from assault with a weapon down to assault simple, like just a simple assault. So, yeah, it's that. My ex is a brown belt in Shotokan karate and military trained. He has a stance and a stare that no man dares to challenge. He never needs a fist. I've seen guys with a lot of training get stabbed up. So never think you're invincible, because it can be a bad situation there. All right. Let's look at some further weird news. And here we go. Let's bring this up. Province demands Twitter user remove post using government wheat sheaf logo. Yeah. Is it true that people with advanced martial arts training have to be registered with the police? Not in Canada. Nope. And I've seen guys with a lot of drink in them pick on guys they shouldn't. Yep. Or guys with meth in them, guys with whatever. Yep. It's lots of situations where, and I mean, I've seen guys who are the biggest, toughest guy in the bar, get into a fight in the bar, win the fight in the bar, and then step outside the bar and get stabbed. And it just is what it is. So, all right. So, the Saskatchewan government demanded that a man remove a tweet that he'd posted using a government logo, saying that it was in violation of a copyright. But a copyright and trademark lawyer says the tweet was legal. Also, as a non-copyright and trademark lawyer, I also think this tweet was legal. So let's have a look at the tweet. This is the tweet. Growth for everyone who donates to the Sask Party. And they used the logo that, with the, I think that the slogan is the growth for everyone. And he added, who donates to the Sask Party, to mock them. So, and somebody's saying, where's the wheat? The wheat is this part. That's supposed to be wheat. Now, cool. This to me looks like the highest form of protected speech, and B, very clear, fair dealing. I think the government here was just way out of line. The government here was saying, hey, don't make fun of us, and wanted to gin up a legal threat in order to, intimidate this guy. Well, good news. You went after this guy on Twitter, who I'm guessing probably didn't have a whole lot of reach, and now it's made national news. Well done, province of Saskatchewan. And also, province of Saskatchewan, if you want to sue me over this one, come at me, bro. Like, yeah, this is such a stupid threat. And, he took down the post. And now, yeah, I see people in the chat have got this. Streisand effect strikes again. Yep. It's just so ridiculous. It's just absolutely nuts. You can make Canadian content off that lawsuit. Yep. All right. So this one I was able to finish. I actually enjoyed that one. People are saying, how spicy is it? And I can say, not super spicy, but it's got a bit of a kick to it, and yeah, it's not bad. It's I mean, I can tell you that it's probably like one ghost pepper goes into like 600 liters of that stuff, but it's not bad. So, huh, the Streisand effect. F around and find out for public figures. Yep. So, yeah. Whoops. And that was a reference to Dr. Moo saying that doesn't look like wheat. I wouldn't chew my cut on that. So, yeah. All right. So I see people saying, "Oh, that's mild ASF, though." Yep. It was super mild, and apparently there is, and this is kind of unfortunate. This is sort of very recent news. Alberta emergency alert issued with 4 armed dangerous suspects in area of Sunchild Ochese First Nations. So that's out near Rocky Mountain House. You can see the Ochese Nation there. They've warned that apparently Colin Beaverbones and Boyd Beaverbones are in a gold-covered SUV with a cargo box on the roof rack. They sent the dangerous alert, person alert, and they basically told everyone to shelter in place. So if you're in that area, shelter in place, because dangerous people. They've said that any suspicious activity should be reported to 911 and not to post details of police activity to social media accounts. So that's not a great place, or not a great situation there. Did you ever buy more of the sour drink? Not yet. I will, though. And I see Beaver Bones, Canadian names for the win. That's a very Indigenous name. That's a very, very Indigenous name. So I'm guessing that they're people from the reserve. So that is in the area of the Sunchild and Ochese First Nations. So, all right. Let's see. What else have we got here? Because, let's see. We covered that one. And let us have a look. Where do I buy the drinks? There's, I think it's like Canada's grocery store or something. So, yeah. Have I ever been to Nelson, BC? Yes, but only just passing through. So, did you see the viral video of the drunk driver who killed 2 people laughing this week? I did. I'm worried about playing that one because I might get a copyright strike. But that one, if you've seen it, this woman is laughing. There's another video that was out there of this woman saying, "When do I get my car back?" And the officer's like, "You don't. You killed 2 people." So don't drink and drive. And yeah. All right. Now let's pull up another story here. Here we go. And I see it's Uchis or Uchis. All right. I'm bad at the pronunciation, I'm afraid, but I'll try to get it right. All right. So this one is Newfoundlander fights off looters in Drayton Valley after returning home for man's best friend. So this one is interesting. So as I was mentioning, there was the fire. And because of the fire, oh, and I'm being told I got to swoop. So because of the fire, he had to flee his home. He had to evacuate. And afterwards, after he evacuated, he went, "I forgot my dog." Now, I don't know how you forget your dog, because I'm going to say if I got an evacuation notice, the first thing I would be loading into the car is the dogs. Dogs would be coming out with me. But So he went back to get his dog, and in the course of getting his dog, he ended up running into people who were breaking into his house, and they got into a fight. I see not Mrs. Runkle. Mrs. Runkle can load herself into the car. She'd be helping me load. But he got into a fight with looters who were trying to raid his house in order to. He apparently won that fight, got his dog out, and you can see that he got a bit of an eye on that one. So I'm just like, why'd he leave the dogs in the first place? I would take the dogs. I would not leave the dogs to, I would not leave the dogs to a fire. So, all right. Good for him fighting them off. It's a tough, that's a rough thing there. But yeah, that's, I don't know. It's a weird story, I think. But, and apparently some looters have been arrested in Drayton Valley. So I don't know if it's the same people. I don't know what the deal is there. But yeah. The other thing you got to be considering is, don't go looting in any of these things. The punishments for those tend to be a lot harsher. So, and it's just jerk activities. So, cops in Alberta want you to let them take it. Yeah, there is some of that. I mean, the guy's lucky he didn't get charged. I see somebody saying the looters are lucky they didn't get shot. Also true. So yeah, it's a sad situation. And I see people take advantage of these situations, unfortunately. Absolutely. Being me, do you cover mainstream cases? I cover a mix of cases. So I just recently covered the Paltrow trial. I didn't cover the Stotch trial or the Vallow trial. I'll probably cover another one fairly soon, but right now I've got some legal writing I've got to get done, and because of that, I can't really do the full follow a trial and do an evening recap thing, because that's it's a little brutal for that. I'm assuming Canadian and U.S. castle doctrine is fairly different. This is interesting because it's a very common misconception. Castle doctrine, what castle doctrine means is that you don't have to retreat from your own home. So you got no requirement to retreat from your house. But that doesn't mean that you get to shoot somebody for coming into your house necessarily. So you can't use lethal force to protect property in Canada, but you can use lethal force to protect yourself. So the common legal, and again, you don't want to, this is not legal advice, but this is a common situation where people are acquitted, is let's say I'm out in a farm community and I see somebody breaking into my shed. Well, I want to stop them from breaking into my shed. I'm entitled to use a certain amount of force to protect my property in that shed. So I grab my shotgun. I go out to the shed. Now, I'm not shooting at them at this point because I'm just protecting me, right? But I go up and I say, get out of my shotgun or out of my shed. Stop taking my stuff. If they just keep loading stuff up, I can't shoot them. But if one of them comes and says, hey, and when I'm there with the shotgun, one of them rushes me, then I might be able to shoot them. Because at that point, I'm defending myself in a situation where I'm at potential lethal threat. So that is a sort of common scenario where somebody might be acquitted of using lethal force, because at the time they're using the lethal force, it's not to defend their property. It's to defend, yourself? And this is an excellent question. Whoops. Can you use lethal force to protect your dogs? No. Under Canadian law, your dogs are property. So, now what might I be doing if I was, in a rural property and people were, had driven onto my property and were stealing my stuff out of my shed? Well, I might put a slug into their engine block. That point, I'm not using force against them. I'm using it against their property to prevent them from stealing my property. These are, again, not legal advice. All of this is very specific. Can you shoot out vehicle tires? Maybe. Again, all of this is very specific. And this is an excellent question talking about the Gerald Stanley trial. Is castle law what Gerald Stanley was acquitted on? So Gerald Stanley was an interesting situation here in Canada, and the way that one worked is basically a group of people, and this became political because they were Indigenous young adults, I think, had been driving around and they were stealing things. This was originally reported that they were driving around looking for directions. This turns out not to be entirely accurate because they'd broken into somebody else's property. They were doing various other things. So they drive onto Gerald Stanley's property and he goes out to confront them. Now, based on, his testimony, he says he fired into the air, and he says basically that he mag dumps into the air. And, and then he pulls out the magazine and he says that he tries to rack the slide in order to empty the gun. The gun is this old Soviet Tokarev TT-33. It's an old Russian gun. Now, according to his testimony, he walks up to the car, he reaches in to try to take the keys, and the gun goes off in his hand, striking Colton Boushey in the head and killing him. So the Crown's theory of the case was that he just intentionally shot Boushey, which if you intentionally shoot somebody in those circumstances, you will go to jail. However, the defense theory in that case was that the gun went off accidentally, and the defense had a theory of a hang fire. And what a hang fire means is that when you fire the gun and it doesn't fire right away. And I can tell you why the Crown lost that case. The Crown lost that case because the Crown's expert agreed that a hang fire was a possibility. Now, does that mean that's what happened? We don't know. All we know is that the court found reasonable doubt on this one. The court found reasonable doubt, and so we don't ultimately know. It could be that that he's a cold-blooded murderer. It could be that it was an accident. It could be that something else happened. My own personal theory is probably that it was something else that happened. But that's that case. It's it's a rough one. And it's really contentious. So not a happy situation. I see a hang fire of a few seconds. Can they take that long? So there's this funny moment in the Boushey trial, and I should do a video on this one at some point. In the Boushey trial, they actually tried to tender as evidence a Reddit thread, like a comment thread on Reddit. And the court quite properly told the defense, GFY. We are 6 minutes away from me being able to say why or what they actually said, but well, not a direct quote, but the line on it. So the court basically said, what the hell are you thinking? No, you can't tender a Reddit thread. Now, I'm pretty sure that the reason why they wanted to tender that Reddit thread is that right afterwards, they had a thing saying, have you ever had a hang fire? And if so, for how long? And I actually posted in that Reddit thread to note that with a TT-33 and with crappy old Soviet ammunition, which is what he was using, I have experienced a hang fire of several seconds. It was probably a good 5, 6, 7 seconds. And, you pull the trigger, nothing happens. You keep it down range and you're like, what the heck? What's going on? Bang. Now, in that circumstance, it was not a big deal. And the reason why it was not a big deal was because I was at the range. I was at the range, so it just wasn't a big deal at all. But I posted that to that Reddit thread, and I'm sure that's what they wanted to put to this expert is, have you seen, here's somebody on Reddit that says this. And the court said, no, you can't tender that. And I mean, and I see, were they stealing? Where's the proof? In the testimony, they were driving around. They had broken into another, property. They actually were carrying a .22 caliber rifle with them. It was in Bushi's lap when he died. This .22 caliber rifle was broken when they used the butt of it to break open a padlock on somebody else's property. So that's how we know that they were driving around stealing, is that they had broken into another property. And yeah. And I see that there's and I see, where's the proof he was doing it at the time? It was the same car trip. It was the same car trip that they were doing this on. So that's where that comes from. So in this circumstance, they were driving around and they had broken into another property on that vehicle trip. So yeah. And stolen property in the car. Yeah. So they were engaged in crime, is unfortunately a big sort of conclusion on that one. And I see somebody was noting that they had a 30-minute hang fire. I suspect the 30-minute hang fire was, they noted, I've seen a hang fire take over 30 minutes. Person took a shot at a deer, but only had a click, brought the gun into camp, and after it warmed up, it discharged. That's terrifying. Sometimes that can happen if you've got something where the hammer freezes itself. So, nope, no proof they were doing it at the time. They were engaged in crime. Nope. I'm sorry, man. They literally had this is from the transcripts where they had been on that same. And I mean, let me see if I can find the quote here, but because they had been engaged in crime on that trip. So I'm just trying to see here. Now the transcripts are 4 volumes. So I'm just looking here. All right, here we go. We can pull up some transcript here. From the transcripts, the same one in front of the Court of Appeals. There's no Court of Appeals on this. Nobody appealed the Bushi verdict. So I'm not sure what you're talking about on the Court of Appeal here, but where is the... All right. So this is from the transcript, just as an example. I guess what led you to you being, investigating that farmyard? I was on Mr. Stanley's farm when I received a call from our dispatch regarding suspicious activity that went on at the nearby farm at approximately the same time frame. The call was a suspicious vehicle, possibly trying to break into Mr. Fooey's truck. And your role at the Fooey farm, were you in charge of the investigation at the Fooey farm? Yes, yes. Okay, and so you arrived at the Fooey farm, and I guess I'm going to turn to some pictures in a moment that will maybe help you, but can you describe what you found when you got there? Sure, I arrived on Mr. Fooey's farm, and I was shown to a truck where the suspects were allegedly trying to break into. It was a red pickup truck, and from the driver's side door on the floor, I found a broken wooden pieces, which was originally described to me as a gun, but it was actually a stock. It was the stock of the gun. So yeah, there was a bunch of testimony there about them having gone around and broken into vehicles. So broken into things. So that was kind of the circumstance there. So it's a complicated trial. It's a complicated, complicated circumstance there. And I think that was also the, I'm just looking here. I think this is from, who is Mr. Burge? Mr. Burge is the prosecutor. I'm just trying to see who this was, the witness that we're looking at here. So we've got here, and what was he doing? He was like hitting the butt end of the gun against the window. And after that, the butt end broke, and it was just like the barrel. And then we jumped back in, and then we left. Then we stopped about maybe 1.5 miles from the place, maybe 2 miles. The muffler was dragging. I mean, this is the Crown witnesses, right? This is the Crown's own witnesses. And they were indicating that they were going, like, this is people from in the vehicle that indicated that they were breaking into vehicles. So I don't know what to tell you about that other than just that is straight up the case. And I'm just noting here as well, what is it? The Manitoba Court of Appeal dismissed the appeal. That is not all. That's also not correct. And I can show you the receipts on that one. So give me a second there. Crown won't appeal not guilty verdict in Gerald Stanley murder trial. The Crown never appealed that one. So that one was never appealed. So I think that maybe we're thinking of different cases here. All right. So it is time. Yeah, and the other reason why it wouldn't have been in the Manitoba Court of Appeal is Saskatchewan case. So they are different cases. They're different circumstances. We're talking about different things here. All right. So Laura M. was asking, do we have one to talk about that is a still a cop versus not a cop no more? So let's play that game. And it's time, of course, for the world's worst game show, which is the still a cop versus not a cop no more. All right. So let's have a look at that one, because it's an unpleasant one. So we had to wait for the 2-hour mark on that one. And somebody's playing the safe bet on this one. I'm going to guess still a cop. So Toronto cop charged with SA, also charged for unwanted relations on domestic call. All right, so Constable Ramdial Lokanath, suspended with pay, faces misconduct charge for 2 separate incidents. So if you said still a cop, you're correct. Still a cop, at least for now. But he is facing charges of SA and also misconduct for inappropriate sexual relations on a domestic call on the same day. Same day. So the tribunal found that he used his position for private advantage, which is a real disgusting way of phrasing that. But yep. So they went to their apartment for reported domestic assault, and they arrested a guy. And then while his partner was in the patrol car, they say he went back into the apartment to take her statement and engaged in inappropriate sexual conduct, which they don't specify in this article. And he turned off his body camera and muted the audio. And later that same day, while off duty, he went back to that apartment and engaged in unwanted and inappropriate sexual relations with the same woman, suggesting that he could influence the charges facing her husband. So, let's talk about the influence the charges facing her husband. Sometimes in domestic assault allegations, you've got somebody who says, I want my husband charged, in which case he might have suggested, hey, I can make sure he goes to jail. But really commonly, what you've got is partners who say, I don't want them charged. I want this person to not be charged, and can you let my husband go, let him come back home? And if that's the case, then this cop might be saying, well, I could assume we could make a deal here. And that's just absolutely disgusting. And quite frankly, this should have been charged as an SA as well, because according to Canadian law, that would be. And he's also charged for misconduct for assaulting his wife. They say that they can't confirm if he faced criminal charges. When they say that they can't confirm, that means that he didn't, because otherwise they would have been happy to say that he did. But he's married and doing this stuff, and also assaulting his wife, at least according to the allegations. So he is suspended with pay. And how much is he making? He is making $159,465 a year. Almost $160,000. $160,000 minus a rounding error. People are saying suspended with pay. With pay. Now, these are Canadian dollars, so, you've got to do a little bit of adjustment. Let's see what $160,000 CAD to USD is. So, in United States dollars, he would be earning $120,000 a year, suspended with pay. Now, I just want to say, there's a lot of circumstances where you get officers who are suspended with pay, and that's a really, I would love to be suspended with pay. Wouldn't that be fantastic to just, as a punishment, you're doing no work for $160,000? It's just ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous here. And, people should be entitled to assume that they will be protected. We've got situations where, sometimes people are like, oh, why do you talk about bad cops? Because this guy makes it so much worse for every good cop. Because every good cop now has to deal with going to a call and people assuming that they might be like this guy. And I mean, if I was a woman, I'd be freaking out about if you're getting arrested and worrying that you might be in the back of a car with a dude like this guy. Like, how does anybody feel safe? How does anybody feel okay? And I see that's almost an incentive. It kind of is, because you can potentially work a second job and make money, and you end up like, you end up in a situation where you might be looking at retirement because you're getting 160,000 on top of what you're making on something else. It's ridiculous. Now, I think Ontario really needs to get their act in gear. They need to figure out a way to, like, for certain allegations, it should be that you get suspended without pay. Because I can tell you that if I personally was charged with an offense, and especially an offense like this one, if I was charged with an offense, like, anything like this, I can tell you that I would not just be suspended with pay. I would be fired with get the hell out. I would be fired with we will mail you your stuff. Do not return to the office. Like, yeah, and I see people at McDonald's get fired for less. Yep. Absolutely. It's ridiculous. So I'm really not a fan of this one. Joe Loy, thank you very much for the €5 or £5 super chat there, or super sticker. Rua, thank you. Thanks again, Ian. This was a much needed distraction. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for joining me. JR, you should do the Ian Bush case in Houston, BC for Still a Cop, Not a Cop. He was shot in the back of the head in the jail cell by a cop. Oh, that's awful. But I see Doug Ford is throwing more money at the police. No way he would change this. Yep. I see suspended, pay in escrow, cleared of all charges, pay is passed on, proven grape, pay is forfeit, easy. I would just say, hey, you're out. You can, if you get cleared, you can apply again. But wait, Ian, you were putting the cart before the horse. He isn't even charged. He was charged with one of them. He was charged with an SA. So he is facing that. You would think abusing police power for SA would be its own charge. Yeah, I would. Yeah, Law Society might have something to say about it. Law Society would, the Law Society, if I was charged with an offense like this, would pull my ability to practice. I would not be able to do work as a lawyer while I was, while that was pending. So I would be, I'd be working at McDonald's. I'd be working, like, it would just be completely, done in that sense. So I find these cases to be just fairly shocking. I think you guys do too, but yeah. All right. And I see Doug Ford is doing just the opposite. He states that law enforcement applicants no longer need a minimum of a college or university degree to apply. You just need high school. I'm torn on this one because, quite frankly, I don't know that you necessarily need a degree. I would be just fine, for example, with a police officer who is with a police officer who's got like a welding ticket and, is like a journeyman welder. To my mind, a journeyman welder brings a lot more to the table than like somebody with a basket weaving degree. Yeah, I don't have that. And Hog Banana, no worries. YouTube is YouTube. So, All right. Well, let's look at another depressing story in the whole still a cop, not a cop no more. Because that we're just going to depress ourselves right here. Uh, and this is a good thought here. Just have a 2-year police academy with the second year being mixed with FTO. Yep. Um, I could see 2 years being on the short side. I could see it being a 3-year post. Like, you got to get some real training on this. We're going to go through some law. We're going to go through use of force. We're going to go through all sorts of things. So, man declared brain dead after being stun gunned multiple times by Prince Albert police, taken off life support. And here's a picture of the guy. He was in hospital for several weeks. And I see Embiggen requests, Embiggen. Yeah, he was in hospital for several weeks. He was declared brain dead, so they took him off life support, and he passed. So they arrested him with stun guns, pepper spray, and batons. So a lot of force that were used. And what is it? They also had a canine unit. And they note that a baton was used against the windshield, that they were striking him before he was released. Apparently, they were striking after him. However, there is an important detail here. And I think this is a very important note here. They found a loaded handgun at the scene, which was not a police officer handgun. So, we're talking about some, we're talking about there was some allegation. Oh, and I'm seeing swoop. I'm guessing the investigation might have had something to do with the gun, but I don't know. I don't know what he was being arrested for, and because it's gone to CERT, they are not they're not releasing a whole lot of information. Now, I can also indicate we've got another story that I can pull up, just to really keep on the depressing angle of things. And this is from my local area. So we'll just pull this up. So Edmonton has the second most police-involved deaths among municipal forces in Canada. So we've had a whole lot of that. And, there's the picture. This is a woman whose husband died. He was having a mental health issue. He was taken to the hospital. They ended up killing him because the police are not really great at dealing with mental health issues. Now, there's a really interesting and kind of horrifying detail in all of this. We're just going to get to the really horrifying detail. Now, here's the provinces. Police-involved deaths per 100,000 population. Look at this graph. So Canada, there's our rate. Ontario, well above. Quebec City, well above. Quebec. BC. Alberta is at 1.62 per 100,000. Well above the average. And we're 39 people in the past 22 years have died in Edmonton as a result of police interventions. And we get to a wonderful note here about, let's see. So the police claims that it's 27. So there's an issue as to some of them are disputed. However, where is the line here? So here's most of those EPS deaths are from gunshot. You can see 26 out of that. And where is the line? So they have criminal charges against police are rare, they say. And you want to know how rare? Well, and they note ACERT, the organization primarily tasked with holding police accountable, has a years-long backlog and has been criticized for using former and current police officers to investigate police misconduct. So former and current police officers, it's police investigating police. Guess how many times that they have laid charges? Guess how many times they've laid charges against a police officer for a use of force death? If you guessed 0, that is the number. No EPS officer has ever been criminally charged for use of force death while on duty. Not ever. We're doing a great job, guys. We're investigating ourselves, and we found we're doing a bang-up job. Every single person who got killed needed killing. That's, yeah. ACERT says, but they're civilians now. Not all of them. They do use current police officers for that as well. So, yep. Let's just see. So, yeah, depressing stories. All right. I guess we'll talk about more police, just to be really depressing. Hamilton police should halt drone program. Which I suppose I should show you guys and not just tell you guys. Because, yeah. I guess before I do, let's look at a super chat here. Morgan 908. In West Virginia, we follow FAFO Castle Doctrine. Fuck around, find out. We're past the 2 hours. Pharmacy owner being robbed at gunpoint, pulled out legally concealed .45 and put 3 in him. Then performed CPR, but robber died. History of armed robbery for Oxy. He fucked around and found out. That'll happen. I don't recommend. And ultimately, that's kind of the... I think that that's the biggest deterrent for all of that. All right. So what are they doing with the drone program? Well, they are running this with basically zero privacy. There's reports that they are looking into people's, houses, into people's backyards, into all sorts of things. They have no, they don't really seem to have a whole lot of checks on that. They say that they don't notify the public during deployments, so you'll never really know. The only good thing is this bit. They've indicated that they have no plans to incorporate facial recognition software or weaponry onto its drones. Note that that's not a plan or pledge not to. And I'm being told to swoop. And people are saying I need to close some tabs. There we go. Tabs closed. So all of this is really concerning in terms of that, because, I mean, a drone can spy on you. A drone can follow you. A drone can all sorts of things. And that is really worrying, right? So now they've got this whole report here. They've got a whole big discussion where they say we're doing nothing wrong. But of course they do. So now let's talk about privacy concerns. And I'm going to add that with a single malt whiskey from the Andalusia Whiskey Company. So we're just going to throw that into a glass here. Now, we have some big privacy concerns here. One of the privacy concerns that we got going on right now is buried in the current Liberal budget. Now, you might be saying, why is there a privacy concern in the budget? Well, because Liberal Party. So the Liberal Party has included something in the budget to say, listen, we are going to have... we're going to have privacy checks or, change the privacy rules for dealing with federal political parties. And so here's what the rules will be. The rules will basically be that you need to have a privacy policy, and you will be responsible for determining what that privacy policy is. You will not be accountable for that privacy policy in any way. You will not have to follow any of the privacy rules. And so that will allow the federal government or federal political parties to collect information on you, disclose information on you, potentially accidentally leak information on you, and there won't be any recourse or anything you can do about it. Because, of course, why would they? In fact, this would mean that political parties are basically the most exempt group from any privacy rules. Now, I think that's a bit of a problem, especially, and you might be saying, why are they doing this? Well, because the Liberal Party has a system, and that system is called the Liberal List. Literally, the Liberal List. And this is a list where they keep track of people and keep tabs on people and basically keep dossiers about different people to determine which people are good Liberal supporters who have lots of social credit with the Liberal Party and which people aren't. So people who are, maybe not so much their fans or whatever else. Guess which part of that list I'm sure I'm on? I'm sure I'm not, they don't have Ian Runkle with a little heart beside it. Now, they've previously admitted that they've used this list to vet judicial appointments. So, because of this list, I am almost certainly less likely to be a judge one day, because the Liberal Party partially was determining who should be a judge based on who's on their good supporter list. That's real concerning. So, all of this is super sketchy, and of course they want to write their own exemptions, like their own exemptions to privacy rules, because it is super freaking messed up. And not enough people are talking about all of this, because it's a problem. But that's why I drink. Whew, that's got some peat to it. That's a little bit ashtray-y. I'm not minding it. I don't mind a little bit of peat now and again, but it was a bit of a surprise. Now I see, don't all political parties do that? No. Most political parties don't vet judges against a list of who they like and who they don't. That's a bit of an unusual thing, right? They got busted doing that. It's sketchy. So, yeah, there's a lot of really shady stuff going on. And, yeah, I see people saying, I like a little campfire in my scotch. This is a little campfire and a little bit of ashtray. So the American Republican Party does it. They brag about it. I think I don't like when the Republican Party does it. I don't like when any party does it. I get people who say, oh, you're a conservative. And the thing is I'm not a conservative, really. I vote for whichever party stinks less at any particular point. And I mean, I sort of always vote holding my nose. When the Conservative Party is in power, you're going to hear me say a lot of things about the Conservative Party is doing a thing and it's dumb, because that's how that goes. I've had some people give me criticism because the Conservative Party advanced a law that was we're going to increase all these mandatory minimums. And I was like, this is stupid. This is a bad proposal. And I had people going, oh, well, when did you become a liberal? It's I never became a liberal. I just hate everybody. So, yeah, I got my own notions as to what a political party should do, and they never do it. So that's and yeah, this kind of sums up a lot of my political take. All parties mauled by bears. Yeah. So yeah. Now people are saying they want to hear some funny stories. Okay, let's try to talk a little bit about my week and things that were a little funnier, because we've done the depressing stuff, and all right, so let's what's a good sort of clip? Oh, not the scary clown. I am actually chat. I'm going to a lot of people had comments about the scary clown, so I'm going to retire the scary clown off of my clip aspect here. So scary clown is retired. Scary clown I've just deleted from that. So let me just see here. I don't have a good I don't have a good intro for this. A good so all I've got is content warnings, which is not what we're looking for here. All right. So my wife, Mrs. Runkle, was she has been this is a busy month for her. She's got a lot of stuff that she is doing. So give me a second here. I will. So she does volunteering. She's going to be doing a lot of stuff that's got her out of town. And as a result of that, Zora has had opinions. Zora's been having some thoughts. And those thoughts are basically, hey, Runkle, what are you doing? Bring back Mrs. Runkle. So she, Zora insists that I let her out frequently so that she can go out and go to the back door, like back gate. And then she sniffs and is like, hey, where's Mrs. Runkle? She actually checks the backyard and like tracks Mrs. Runkle to the back gate to be like, where's Mrs. Runkle? Why is Mrs. Runkle not here? Okay, I will confirm that she's not here. So she was really holding it against me that Mrs. Runkle was not here. Like I was going to watch a show and I was like, hey, come snuggle, which Zora is normally totally down for. And she was like, no. Normally when I go to bed, Zora likes to sort of curl up and often press her head and rest it against me and be like, and so she was like, nope, you are not, Mrs. Runkle is gone. Why did you do this? So she was over on the other side of the bed glaring at me like, you know what you did. And I'm like, what? What did I do? What do you want me to do? So she was in like a full-on sulk. And that full-on sulk lasted for about a day. And so then I'm sitting there and what is it? Zora was, and this was also super cute. So Zora was off and she was snuggling with Potter. Potter likes to sleep on the couch downstairs. And so Potter was, curled up on the couch and Zora was actually curled up next to Potter. And I knew that she'd sort of forgiven me because I went down to have a nap and I curl up into the bed to have a nap. And Zora came down from where Potter was sleeping and came up onto the bed and was like, put her head on my legs. And I was like, okay, am I forgiven then? And she's like, shut up. I'm snuggling. Shut up and be a pillow. So that was at least a nice moment. Potter, who's not normally super snuggly, also had a moment where he climbed up on the bed and was like, I just want to like lay next to you. And that was kind of super cute too. So yeah, this is an accurate comment. It was, you'll do after all. Yeah. So and I am being I should give you guys please like this stream reminder. We are at 1,111 and 907 likes. If you are one of the people who hasn't liked this stream but actually likes the stream, hit the like button. That would be much appreciated. Oh, yes. And I guess in other news, if I get assassinated, this will be probably because I got into a Twitter dispute. I don't get into Twitter disputes that often. I used to get into online arguments, but I got tired of it. But yeah, some guy was real excited about arguing with me and was letting me know just how much of a badass he is. I think he may have blocked me now. Nope. Here he is, Jonathan Scott. So if you're on my Twitter, you can see this Jonathan Scott guy. And I'm just sharing this because it's freaking funny. So he posted some stuff that was entertaining, talking about, he's like, he was saying basically, he's telling this other guy who's not me, he's like, I'll blow a 1 million to make sure you never recover. I'll string this lawsuit out to bankrupt you, that kind of thing. And so I'm just like, all right. So I posted and was just like, and I see people saying screen share. Yeah, let me pull that up. Let me just see if I can pull this up here. And I see no doxing. It's not doxing. The guy is, in public. So this gets a little funny because I'm like, hey, there's never a good time to be saying that I will intentionally stall things to rack up legal fees. And then he starts getting weird. And this is where things get really weird. So they note, okay, bro, whatever you say. It's funny how 2 Canadian lawyers are jumping in talking nonsense to me. That's not random. And I'm like, I don't know who the other lawyer is. I don't know what this is about. And I see people saying embiggen a bit more. So I don't actually know who this other lawyer is, but apparently there's another lawyer there. So my comment, hey, all these people are telling me to stop eating paint chips. That's not random. But then it gets real weird. So if you're wondering, I'm just saying, like, if I get assassinated, here's why. Because this guy's entertaining threats. You should really research who I am and what I do. I'm pretty sure if you did, you wouldn't be so bold as to be sending messages like this to me. And then, what is it? He goes on to say, you're threatened by a researcher that exonerates governments that are wrongfully accused of espionage. But, then he goes on and says, talking to me like this puts you on a world stage that is bigger than your YouTube channel. You have no idea what you have stepped into. Again, the hand gesture. The hand gesture is appropriate. And yeah, I'm like, again, with the cryptic comments, you're being really silly. No one on the world stage cares if you have hurt feelings other than to maybe roll their eyes at you and talk about you behind your back. And if you can't figure out a name behind an account, you aren't scary. People are saying I don't think it's the property brother, Jonathan Scott. He's some guy who does InfoSec. Now, I just want you to say, guys, because, he's threatening that I'm on the world stage and all of this and all of that. So if I end up being assassinated, then you will know that Jonathan Scott is a man who should not be fucked with. Oh, wait, sorry, I missaid that. I meant that if I get assassinated, you'll know that he's a man who you shouldn't fuck. And that's true either way, because honestly, this guy is like threatening somebody online over disagreeing with you on Twitter really indicates you've got some serious insecurities, some serious, like that's just ridiculous. Yeah, he's a laughingstock among the Twitter InfoSec, aka information security, cyber community. Yeah, it's like, hey, I'm going to threaten you. It's like, okay. And here's the other thing. If I don't get assassinated, then Jonathan Scott is full of shit. So Either way, Jonathan Scott, either you are the smallest, most pathetic piece of crap on the internet. Well, no, you got lots of competition. You are a small, pathetic piece of crap on the internet, or you're like a total wanker. So, yeah, I'm just like, I don't like the phrase small dick energy because I don't like the whole, I find that to be kind of sexist. But holy crap, I don't know what else to describe this as, because this is a guy who is seriously compensating for some some sort of issues. At least that's the feeling on that one. So yeah, this is a good one. How about cockwomble energy? Yep. Yeah, or Napoleon energy. So short man syndrome. Yeah, except I mean, there's nothing wrong with a short guy. It's just this is a guy who isn't just like a short guy. He's just like how is it that one of my friends described it? She was saying that she doesn't mind dating short guys, but she minds dating short guys who mind that they're short guys, if that makes sense. Like the guys who never stop talking about it. And yeah, this is a good description. This dude is to the InfoSec community as boozy as to LawTube. So, yeah, if this guy, if you're watching, Mr. Scott, holy fuck, that's hilarious. So, that would be the funniest thing in and of itself. So, and I'm just watching the viewer count to see if it drops by one. All right. So I love this. He's just a Willy Wonka. Nice. All right. This is a good comment. Elise Lynch. I hate short guys that try to make me feel bad for being 5'11". My wife is taller than I am. And it's awesome. Like, one of us has to be able to reach the tall stuff on the shelves. Yeah, I don't get why people are upset about that one. You just gotta, roll with what you roll with. So yeah. Am I in the wildfire zone where you're at? There's no evacuations. My wife and I have a sort of evac bag. We're ready to go if we need to, but yeah, it's and I see don't half-ass it. Vote Cthulhu in 2023. Yeah, don't vote for a government that's going to cause destruction through careless policies. Vote for a government that'll cause destruction intentionally. So, yeah, and this is a good point there. Insecure guys are the worst to date, way worse than whatever they're insecure about. Yes, that's basically it. It's just the, the people who are freaked out about it and can't stop talking about their insecurities. Yeah. Chris Mullen, I'm 4'9" and everyone is tall to me. That is short. My mom is actually quite tiny. She comes up to like here on me, and I'm not huge. Like I'm 5'10". I'm not like a giant or anything like that. But I can tell you, my mom has put the fear of God into some much bigger people than she is. She is just there's something to be said for like the size of a personality in the room. Because, yeah. All right. Let's just look at what else we can look at here. I guess let's finish up with, let's look at a case, because can't go all night, much as we might like to, but let's look at a case. And we're going to need to embiggen. So this is the case of the King and Cooper. All right. So you might be wondering, what is this? Now you see that the cases have already started changing over from Regina, as in the Queen, to Rex versus Kenneth Jeffrey Cooper. All right, and this is out of Chilliwack. And you know how you know this case is going to be good? You know how you know this is going to be awesome? Kenneth Jeffrey Cooper, a.k.a. Tiberius Rex. A.k.a. Tiberius Rex. You know that this is going to be solid and... And Dusty, we already talked about this. This was at the beginning of the stream. So we talked about how they're rushing all that through. They're cutting off discussion and debate. So now this guy is charged with some really serious offenses. We're just going to, oh, yes. And the other thing is appearing on his own behalf. He does not have counsel. Does Canada have sovereign citizens? Oh, we're about to answer that question. We're definitely about to answer this question. Kenneth Jeffrey Cooper is charged on information, and they give the number, with driving while prohibited, contrary to Section 95(1) of the Motor Vehicle Act, possession of an unstamped tobacco product, to wit, cigarettes, and with the unlawful possession of tobacco in contravention of the Tobacco Tax Act or regulations under that act, contrary to the Tobacco Tax Act. So basically, he's got some illegal cigarettes, and he's driving while he's banned from driving. Now, the most serious of those charges is the driving while he's banned from driving. That often has jail time. Mr. Cooper represented himself at trial. On the first day of trial, he advised the court that while he was previously known as Kenneth Jeffrey Cooper, he preferred to be called Tiberius Rex, or just Tiberius. For the sake of clarity, I will refer to him throughout these reasons as the defendant. So, yeah. Crown's not, or the court is already not putting up with his crap, right? So, what's going on? What happens here? How does this come to be? He was traveling behind the wheel of a Mercedes Sprinter panel van. I wonder if it was a white panel van. He was accompanied by a passenger, and they came to the attention of the police officers who were conducting speed enforcement. Why does he come to the attention of speed enforcement officers? Well, because he's rolling along at 114 kilometers an hour in a portion of the highway that was under construction. The posted speed limit in the construction zone was 60 kilometers per hour, meaning that he was doing almost double the limit. So this is a bad idea when you are when you're also driving when you're prohibited from doing so. Yeah, and I note he went to the reserve, bought smokes, and was speeding with no license. Yep. He wasn't just... Now, this is not just no license, because there's a difference between no license and a guy who's actually banned from driving. And this guy is banned from driving. All right. The officers stopped the Sprinter van and commenced an investigation. Nearly the entirety of the interaction between the defendant and the investigators was recorded on a dash cam video recorder mounted in one of the police vehicles. I have got to see if I can order that. Most of the interaction the police had with the defendant inside the police vehicle was also audio recorded. Yes! As the Sprinter van was traveling at a speed in excess of 40 kilometers per hour over the posted limit, the investigators determined that they must impound it pursuant to the Motor Vehicle Act. If you're going too fast, they take your car. And that was his situation. The defendant was initially not forthcoming with his name, resulting in some delays and a modicum of acrimony between him and the investigators. This is probably an understatement. Eventually, the defendant provided sufficient information for investigators to determine his identity. I'm guessing he told them that he was Tiberius Rex. The defendant raised 3 charter issues at the outset. Okay, good for him. Firstly, that his 10B charter rights were violated when, upon his arrest, he was not provided access to counsel without delay. That's actually a legitimate argument. Or at least it's a an argument known to law. Secondly, that his Section 8 rights to be free from unreasonable search and seizure were violated when the Sprinter van was searched without a warrant. And thirdly, his 10C rights pursuant to a claim of habeas corpus were violated when he was not transported directly from roadside to appear before a Superior Court justice to review the lawfulness of his detention. All right. So approximately 16 minutes and 30 seconds after the stop, he was arrested for driving while prohibited, removed from the van, and placed in the back of the vehicle. They declined to provide him with his right to speak to counsel without delay, and they excluded utterances made by the defendant to police officers for 9 minutes of time. That's actually surprising because normally when you are normally at the roadside, you don't necessarily get to speak to the cops or to a lawyer right away. I don't know why that was excluded, but apparently it was. There's a voir dire to determine whether the search was lawful, and the search was lawful. And they admitted the results. He complained about the seizure of his keys and says that was an unlawful seizure. Constable Miller testified that he asked the defendant to provide the keys, and he did so. And he said that he turned over the keys because the officers had the guns. But the court has already determined that the vehicle search was lawful and that the vehicle could not be impounded or inventoried without the keys. So they're saying the seizure of the keys should be lawful, which the court agrees with. All right. Now, I'm just wondering if this guy actually gets around to making a Freeman on the land argument, because this was listed as a Meads and Meads kind of Freeman on the land case. They seized 16 cases containing 50 cartons of cigarettes each. Okay. So initially I thought we're talking about like this guy had some cigarettes. 16 cases of 50 cartons. Let me just do some quick math on that. I'm being very bad at typing. 16 times 50 is 800 cigarettes in a carton. Come on, Google. Don't make me do the I'm not a robot every time. 200 cigarettes in a carton. So 800 times 200. Okay, he had 160,000 cigarettes. 160,000 cigarettes. I was wrong about that. This might actually be the most serious thing there is the cigarettes now. Constable Miller testified that he recognized the cigarettes as being rolled gold, a brand with which he was familiar from his former policing duties in northern Manitoba. He said he understood the cigarettes were made on First Nation reserves in either Ontario or the United States, and that they were illegal to possess in British Columbia because they lacked taxation stamps. I see people are saying, how big was the car again? The car was it's a van. So it's a panel van. All right. Now, I don't know how much that's got to be worth a ton of money. Even without the taxes, that's got to be a ton of money. So that's a huge amount. All right. So they then go and they note that none of the tobacco products could be legally sold in British Columbia, even on reserve, because they lacked the required excise duty stamps. And they note that enforcement action was generally undertaken only when an individual is found with more than 5 cartons. He had a little more than 5 cartons, folks. Little more than 5 cartons. And in cross-examination, he confirmed that there are people who possess more than 5 cartons of unstamped cigarettes. He was asked about whether it was possible for individuals to sell goods such as a baked pie without having the government's authorization to do so. And the officer answered that his expertise pertained to the enforcement of tobacco, and he could not comment on other Ministry of Finance matters like pies. So, yeah. It sounds like he didn't do all that great on cross-examination. Cigarettes were produced on and this is a quote, native reserve, likely one of several possible reserves in eastern Canada or the United States. He confirmed that many reserves manufacture cigarettes and they're legal when manufactured on reserve. The cigarettes can be sold to Indigenous people who possess a status card. He explained that some First Nation reserves are able to apply for an exemption that allows them to sell the cigarettes on reserve lands exempt of provincial sales tax or any tax that wouldn't ordinarily attach to the sale of tobacco. So it looks like he may have gone on a long distance trip to buy these cigarettes and then come back. And you wonder why? Well, because that's a fair bit of cash. And he did confirm that it was illegal to possess these off of reserve lands. Cool. Based on the possession of 160,000 individual cigarettes, the amount of tax not paid, this is not the value, by the way, this is the tax not paid, is $47,200. Almost 50 grand for that. So that's a lot of money. All right. What is it? Ellen Henson. The defense he testified in his own defense, and he called two other witnesses. Ellen Henson is the defendant's mother. She testified that she gave him his birth name, Kenneth Jeffrey Cooper, but that he now goes by the name Tiberius. Ms. Henson was asked questions about whether his legal name was registered with all capital letters. Ms. Henson said it was not. So now we see the Freeman on the land stuff. Now we see that he's running this whole, is his name in all caps? And he says no. Okay. That doesn't mean a damn thing, right? So Ms. Davis is the passenger. She testified that she was traveling with the defendant on May 24th, 2020. She said she could not remember if Constable Miller opened the passenger door of the Sprinter van or not. She said she recalled the officer reaching over her to obtain the vehicle keys, but could not remember anything else about the interaction. She acknowledged having a really bad memory, which in conjunction with the passage of time, caused her to have difficulty recalling any other details. Cool. End of that witness. That's not super useful. I see relevance. I'm guessing his argument is going to be that because they've got the name in all caps, that's not him. We'll see. The defendant. In his testimony, the defendant admitted virtually all of the essential elements of each of the charges he faced. He acknowledged that he was operating the Sprinter van that was stopped and searched by the police officers. He claimed ownership of the boxes of cigarettes contained in the back of the van. The defendant's defense was not based upon a misapprehension of the facts or a strong disagreement with the Crown's evidence. Rather, it pertained to his interpretation of the law, which involved a perceived authority to operate a motor vehicle while prohibited and to possess items deemed by the government to be unlawful. This is where stuff is going to start getting fun, I'm betting. I haven't read this one through, but we're going to see. The defendant described the journey that he'd been on since 2005 or 2006, which began with the bank initiating foreclosure proceedings upon his house. This is a common path to Freeman on the land or sovereign citizen or whatever else stuff. People run into some financial or legal trouble and they look for a route out and they run into some bad information online. So he said he began researching the law and learned as part of his study that a person does not have to possess a driver's license in order to operate a motor vehicle. Incorrect. The defendant focused on the particular definition found in Section 95 of the Motor Vehicle Act. He said that the term driving had a specific meaning that did not pertain to him. He said he was not driving, but traveling, and therefore the strictures of the Motor Vehicle Act, which described driving, did not apply to him. He argued that his right to move freely across the country was protected by Section 7 of the Charter. Based on his newfound understanding of the law, the defendant said he began operating motor vehicles again and continued to travel on roadways and highways. Now, yeah, he had $130,000 Canadian of cigarettes calculated as if they were legal cigarettes It was more than chump change. Yeah. Now, this driving versus traveling distinction is a really common thing you'll see in sovereign citizens slash freemen on the land slash, all of that sort of nuttery. Because it is, it's not a thing. And it's not at all it's not at all, an actual point. And so what they say is that driving, this is what they claim, right? In their, in their sort of zany BS. They say that driving involves transporting goods or otherwise engaging in commerce. And that's not how that works. So, and the other problem is, even with the usual arguments on all of this, even with the usual sort of discussion on, driving versus traveling, this guy is moving a bunch of cigarettes that he clearly plans to sell. So at that point, you're saying, well, he's obviously, even by their standards, he would normally be saying that they are driving. So I see Donut Operator would like to play Sovereign Bingo with this one. Love his stuff, and Donut Operator is a great guy. I had the opportunity to meet him briefly at his range day, and I gotta say, he is. It was a lot of fun. So Andrew J. noting, catching up on double speed. The registering fists as deadly weapons urban legend started when Bruce Lee made a joke in a magazine interview. Yeah, that makes sense. And Adam, son of Randor, any advice? My father just passed away. How long can his firearms remain in his apartment while I wait for my pal? I just submitted. Everything is legally stored. I am the executor. I can't find sympathetic legal counsel. Reach out to me by email, but the short answer is a reasonable period. But shoot me an email and I'll try to respond and see what's going on. All right. So, all right. He says that he was operating the Sprinter van and conceded that he was traveling over the 60 kilometer per hour limit. And he said that he was only keeping up with other traffic, but for reasons unknown to him, he was stopped by the investigators while the other vehicles continued onward. Now, I'm just going to note, lots of people try to make this argument in traffic court. Lots of people say, listen, I was going the same speed as everyone else. I shouldn't get a ticket. What about all those other people? And what the court says is, listen, they don't have to stop everybody, but they can stop any of those people they want to. So this is not an argument that the court will accept. If you were speeding, then you were speeding. Done. The defendant agreed he'd been served with a driving prohibition. He asserted that he was prohibiting from driving for the province, not in the province. He appeared to draw an important distinction between the words for and in. As I understand it, the defendant believed that the prohibition would only apply to him if he was a government employee working and driving for the province of British Columbia. That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. So, yeah. And this is a good question. If you had trouble with the subscription corrections that YouTube has made, YouTube has been purging subscribers from just about every channel. So I went down by about 500, and then I went up by 500 again. So you gain some, you lose some. It's all a game there, and you can't worry too much about it. Easy come, easy go. But they were purging some old subscribers. Regardless, it did not matter whether he was in violation of the Motor Vehicle Act because he was not driving while prohibited. He explained that the act of driving made the car a vehicle, therefore subject to the Motor Vehicle Act. He related the act of driving to a commercial activity contingent upon an employment relationship. That is to say, those who were driving were doing so as part of their duties as employees. The defendant alleged that the definition of driving found in Black's Law Dictionary made a clear link between the act of driving and the existence of a commercial relationship of one kind or another. This is not lawful law. This is not correct. The defendant further argued that the only reason the van was searched was that the officers were bored while waiting for the tow truck to arrive. This was refuted by the officers who conducted the search, and I've already deemed the search to have been lawful. And Adam, no problem. As I said, shoot me a message. I'll try to respond there. But yeah. All right. As for the cigarettes, the defendant submitted that he was a non-status native, and therefore the cigarettes were legal for him to possess. He said he purchased the cigarettes and indeed the Sprinter van so he could earn money with side projects, i.e., he's selling these, right? It's obvious that he's selling these. There's just no other reasonable explanation for that many cigarettes. And I mean, maybe he can think of one I can't think of, but I think he'd have to testify to it. And instead, he's testifying to the opposite of that. The defendant argued that he had every right to purchase and transport the cigarettes, as he could have as many as he wanted at one time as a non-status native. He acknowledged that they were unstamped and described himself as an unlicensed cigarette dealer. Yeah, a lot of my clients have that kind of notion. Like, I've had a lot of clients who are unlicensed pharmacists who deal in, say, opiates, for pain killing, and stimulants for stimulating. Yeah, this is not a thing. The defendant made a further argument that pertained to the capitalization of his name in the information. This is also classic sov-sit stuff. We'll see how it runs for him. As testified to by his mother, he said that his former name only had the first letter of each name capitalized. This guy calls his mom to testify as to his name. This is actually funny because there's a law school problem. This is a funny law school problem that people get asked, which is, how do you know what your name is, and can you testify to your name in court? Because most people didn't name themselves, and most people have only heard their name from others, and therefore there's the argument that it's hearsay. But this guy actually gets around the hearsay problem by literally calling his mother as a witness. Good points on that. And yeah, this is an excellent thing. Smuggling cigarettes also gets you in big trouble in Croatia. The government gets not happy when you touch the cigarette tax money. And Canada also starts with a C, so I imagine it's the same there. Yeah, no country loves it when you touch the tax money. I will note that hearsay point on your name, no court is ever going to take an issue with it. But I just think it's funny that he actually called his mom to testify as to his name. So, all right. Additionally, 6 or 7 years ago, he changed his name to Tiberius. I gather the defendant's point was that as his former legal name was not all capitalized, he should not be liable for the charges when his last name was all capitals in the information, which is a very common argument in the sov-sit aspect. And Leon Wright, thank you very much for 20 gifted memberships. That's very much appreciated. That's awesome. So, in his closing submissions, the defendant explained that his point of view in more detail. He said that all of Canada and British Columbia is a corporation. Again, this is a really common sovereign citizen, freeman on the land argument, and it is ridiculous. It just does not fly. The law and regulations drafted by the management of these corporations only applied to its employees or those who work for the government. He was not a government employee, but a private citizen. Therefore, none of the laws pertained to him, not the Motor Vehicle Act, not the Tobacco Act, or the Excise Act. The defendant also argued that he had an off-the-books understanding with a police officer in Abbotsford. Off the books is in quotation marks. He said that officers knew about him, and at least one of them agreed that if he appeared legal, the police would leave him alone. He provided no evidence to support this arrangement. Nonetheless, he submitted that if one officer in Abbotsford allowed him to operate a scooter without complying strictly with the laws pertaining to motor vehicles, then officers throughout British Columbia ought to be bound to the terms of this arrangement, regardless of what motor vehicle he might be found to be operating. Just because one cop gives you a break on something, doesn't mean you are just like free from laws. That's not how the law works. Yeah, that's That's ridiculous. And I see somebody saying after Trump, same issues in Canada. No, this is not. This was way before Trump that these guys started showing up. All right, I'm just adding an extension to my ears here. I'm going to play some music just to test my ears. Give me a second. Yeah. All right, can you guys hear the music? I can't hear the music. All right, I don't know. Maybe my ears aren't working here. All right, you guys say that you can hear the music. I was not hearing any music. Maybe my audio engine needs a restart. There we go. I'm just trying to see if I can get this functioning. Sorry, give me 1 second. There we go. All right, sorry, my head was getting pulled on all of this. Just trying to get my ears properly working. Danny just saw your invite. She's streaming the Lori Vallow trial on hers. She sincerely appreciates it and is honored by your invite and loves you very much. Oh, that is awesome. I will probably wrap up after this case and then head over there. Danny is awesome. So we'll have to see there. All right, so let's keep going here. Thank you guys for passing the message along. That's really appreciated. All right, so as for the legality of possessing unstamped cigarettes, the defendant once again asserted that federal and provincial laws bound government employees, not private citizens himself. He confirmed that as a non-status native, he did not possess an Indian Act status card. When asked to confirm the nature of his indigeneity, for example, if he was Métis or Inuit, the defendant declined to answer, arguing that such a question was racist. Okay, I mean, I'm just going to tell you, lots of people claim to be Indigenous and aren't. And Indigenous people in Canada can typically back that up with at least some explanation. For example, you've got people who will say, like I might ask somebody, hey, what is your, what's your tribe? And they'll be able to say, like, listen, I am, I'm from this group. Like I'm, Cree, I'm from Ochese. I'm from, like people can describe where they're from, like, so yeah. Now this gets even worse. And I see Dave Higginson, what will you be drinking at CCFR nights in Ottawa? I don't know. Might be, I often drink a Caesar, so we'll see. We'll see what's available. The defendant further argued that all of Canada was native land. He said that this was a fact, provided a further defense to the tobacco charges. If it is legal to possess the tobacco on reserve land, the fact that much of Canada was unceded native territory of one kind or another had the effect of rendering his conduct lawful. It does not. And I see we've got people noting Cherokee, Métis, Quinault, Blackfoot, band membership, family history. Yep, absolutely. I can just note that there's a ton of people who, they can tell you all sorts of things. They can tell you who they're related to. They can tell you, you'll get family connections. Got Micmac. I actually think it's really awesome how many Indigenous folks watch the channel. Because I mean, it's good to know laws, but also hopefully that means I'm not too much of an asshole. Is kind of the long and short of it. Sadly, there is a lot of discrimination and a lot of bad practice. I hope I'm not falling into that. So let me know if I ever am a dick. Is basically that. So all right. what is it? He argued that cigarettes were produced on native land but had to be transported to other places. If transportation of any kind was legal, then it must be legal for him to transport that as well. The defendant submitted that he participated in a kind of shadow economy that operated alongside the government-controlled economy, but outside of the strictures of provincial or federal regulation. This is never a good line, because everything in the economy is within regulation in some way. Unstamped cigarettes were an example of a product that could be purchased within his shadow economy, i.e. the black market is what he's talking about, right? In exchange for generally lower prices, consumers assumed some sort of risk. For example, there was no guarantee that the cigarette packages purchased in the shadow economy would have a uniform number of cigarettes in them, or that the content would be pure tobacco. I am pretty sure that if this guy bought, this guy would not be thrilled if the cigarettes he bought contained some cyanide. And I see people are back from EDB's recording. Welcome back. This is, we're going through some sovereign citizen craziness. So this is a guy, it is Mr. Cooper. He is also known as Tiberius Rex. And he is, he's having some problems because he got pulled over driving when he's banned from driving, and also was found with 160,000 illegal cigarettes. Whoops. So, as a further example, the defendant suggested that he could legally purchase a pie from his neighbor. However, by agreeing to do so, he was assuming some level of risk, as there were no regulations to ensure the ingredients were uniform or safe. He would have no recourse if he became ill, as he would had he purchased the pie from a government-sanctioned vendor, such as a commercial store. He accepted that risk, and it was his right to do so because he was not a government employee. Again, none of this is actually the correct standard of the law. So, yeah. Oh, yes. And how did he get caught? He was going twice the speed limit in a construction zone. Not a great move. And people are saying you can't roll your own smokes. I believe there are exceptions for personal use, but I'd have to look that up. I don't know them offhand, because I can say that I just don't smoke. So if I did, I might look into growing my own tobacco, but I don't. So, all right. In sum, the defendant's position was that he had a right to operate outside the limits of government laws or regulations. He chose to opt out of mainstream laws, and thus they did not apply to him. Laws and regulations were in place to regulate the conduct of government employees, not private citizens such as himself. This is a line of reasoning that's identified in the Meads and Meads case, which is like the important case about this, as basically the whole laws are optional line. And the fun thing is that laws are not optional. And I see, wasn't that Captain Kirk's middle name? Yep. Tiberius is in fact Captain Kirk's middle name. So, all right. As a final argument, the defendant stated that he had not consented to the prosecution and once again claimed habeas corpus. He equated the compulsion to participate in the trial to being held against his will. He was advised that the prosecution would continue with or without his participation. The defendant thereafter continued to participate. This is one of these proceedings where they can actually proceed in your absence if you are not there. And also, can you imagine how this would work if you had to consent to a prosecution? It's like, oh, right, I've just murdered 7 people, but I've decided I'm not going to consent to prosecution, so I can't go to jail. And the police are like, dang it, again? Why is no one agreeing to go to jail for the rest of their lives? Yeah, that's obviously not how that works, right? This is obviously not how that works. Like, not even a little bit, not even close. So, analysis. The defendant's position resembles what has come to be known as organized pseudo-legal commercial arguments, or OPCA. Now, OPCA is basically the catch-all term that Canada uses to describe sovereign citizens, freemen on the land, the Moors. The Moors is like another like freeman on the land thing. Various other flavors of this. They're various flavors of this kind of things. So he says that as a living man and a natural-born human, he possesses certain inalienable rights that transcend the rules and regulations thrust upon him by the corporate entities of British Columbia and /or Canada. As I understood him, the defendant's position was that he was entitled to behave in any way he deemed appropriate, as long as he did not physically hurt anyone. This included possessing items that he wanted to, whether or not laws, acts, or regulations deemed it legal to do so. Let me tell you, friends, if I was entitled to do anything I wanted, including possessing items that I wanted to, so long as I didn't hurt anybody, you know how many machine guns I'd possess? Well, more than 0. I could tell you that, because the correct amount, or the amount that I currently possess, is 0, and I would possess more than that. But as it turns out, the laws, or as they would be described in the Brooks trial, the lawful laws, would indicate that I would go to jail for that. So, yeah. The defendant has been polite and respectful throughout this prosecution. That is a good thing, because a lot of these guys are not polite or respectful. A lot of these guys really piss off the court. But it sounds like he just made he argued his BS and ran it through. Nonetheless, his position is, at its core, untenable. It is baseless and without merit. I'm encouraged to summarily dismiss such arguments as nonsensical bafflegab. Nonsensical bafflegab. I love that. That is a great turn of phrase. And not waste the taxpayers' money or the court's time on submissions that have a 0 chance of success. And he cites to Meads and Meads and to the King and Hardy. Remember Hardy? The man known as Cameron Hardy? The man who wants to be known as Cameron Hart? Yeah, that guy, among many other decisions. I feel nonetheless compelled to make a few comments. I am really glad that he does. Also, every time I see the Cameron Hardy case, I just got to say, mentally, my brain swaps in a different Hardy. Mentally, my brain swaps in this Hardy. And I go, Hardy is once again in legal trouble. All right. So firstly, with respect to the driving while prohibited charge, I find it astounding that the defendant would think it was a useful exercise to argue that he was traveling and therefore not driving. Yeah. He relied on an alleged definition of driving found in Black's Law Dictionary to support his position that by changing the name of the activity, he would avoid liability for it. The defendant supplied no definition from Black's Law Dictionary, nor did he explain how such a definition, if it existed, would impact the Motor Vehicle Act. Now, lots of people think Black's Law Dictionary is a useful document. And I have a copy of it somewhere, I think. I bought a copy of Black's Law Dictionary when I was a law student, and I thought it was going to be real useful. I can tell you I've actually used it once, and I'm really thinking that the thing I'm going to do with it at some point is to hollow it out and make some sort of storage out of it. Is this it? No, that's my copy of Tremere's. So an actual useful document. Black's Law Dictionary basically provides some definitions of how words have been used, but that doesn't mean that they are the correct legal definition. And the other thing you got to be aware of when you look at legal definitions is that laws often define how a word will be used in that law. And that definition might be surprising. So as an example, you might see a definition that says you shall not have any you shall not keep any cattle within the city. A bylaw that says no cattle in the city. And then you'll have a definition section. It'll say definition. Cattle includes all cows, goats, pigs, sheep, ducks, chickens, guinea pigs, and I don't know, ferrets. And you might think, well, how's a duck or a ferret cattle? Well, it's cattle because the definition literally says that it's cattle. And so you might say, well, what about bison? Well, if it doesn't say including in there and just lists those animals, then bison are not cattle by that definition. Even though bison are, of the cattle family. And I see people saying, what about bulls? Well, bulls would be an interesting question because bulls, you get into the question of, is cows supposed to include the male and female bovines, or is it just intended to include the females? So that all of this, but that definition takes priority because that's within the law. And if Black's Law Dictionary says cattle means something else, Black's Law Dictionary is irrelevant to that particular bylaw. The other thing is when you want to cite to a dictionary definition, you have to actually tender the dictionary definition. You have to actually quote it. You have to actually provide that. So he didn't do that. But the court goes on to note, the British Columbia Court of Appeal, however, did grapple with the definition of driving as it pertains to the Motor Vehicle Act. In the King or Queen and Steeden, would have been the Queen, the facts in Steeden are dissimilar to those in this case. The issue in Steeden was whether failing to apply a parking brake before disembarking from a motor vehicle, which had been parked with the engine off, constituted an act of driving. And nonetheless, at paragraph 9, the Court of Appeal referenced Black's Law Dictionary in defining driving as follows: to urge forward under guidance, compel to go in a particular direction, urge onward, and direct the course of. The court also referenced the shorter Oxford English Dictionary version of drive, to urge onward and direct the course of, a vehicle or animal which draws it, a railway train, etc., to cause to move along. And they discussed these definitions in the context of the Motor Vehicle Act, concluding as follows: in my view, that when it is intended to describe conduct in relation to a motor vehicle, the ordinary meaning which attaches the verb drive in the English language is one that combines the elements of movement and control, movement of the vehicle, and control of that movement by the person said to be driving. They all, but you notice that the definition that he has from Black's Law Dictionary isn't actually the definition from Black's Law Dictionary. And this happens a lot. I'll get people who say, oh, the definition of a person is of a monster. And I go, that makes no sense. And the reason why is because somebody put that online, but it's not actually what's in Black's Law Dictionary. I guess I've used Black's Law Dictionary for 2 things. 3 if you count paperweight. Actually, no, I used to use it to prop up my monitor, but then I got a better desk that, where I don't need that. So, pursuant to Section 2 of the Motor Vehicle Act, a motor vehicle means a vehicle not run on rails that is designed to be self-propelled or propelled by electric power obtained by overhead trolley wires, but does not include mobile equipment, a motor-assisted cycle, or regulated motorized personnel or personal mobility device. Clearly, the Sprinter van was a motorized vehicle as described in the Motor Vehicle Act. All right. Giving the effect to the defendant's argument would be the worst example of elevating form over substance. It would render virtually any law meaningless merely by referring to the prohibited conduct by another name. One could not be convicted of shoplifting when they were simply repurposing unsold goods for personal use. Assault would no longer be criminal when the defendant was guilty only of intentional application absent consent. Murder would be allowed as purposeful, non-consensual early life termination. I love the judge's snark here. This is judicial snark, and judicial snark is a fine art, because judicial snark, you can't just come in and say this guy's a moron. The judge can't do that, but they can use phrases like baffle gab, which you get away with because it's old-timey. And they can say, they can do some mockery there with like, assault would no longer be criminal when you were guilty only of intentional force application absent consent. That's some mockery. So, and good night, Mary. I give little consideration to the defendant argument that laws and regulations are only meant to direct the conduct of government employees. That argument falls under the rubric of nonsensical submissions that deserve summary dismissal. Like it or not, one cannot simply opt out of the laws and regulations with which one does not agree. Society provides many benefits to its citizens, including the construction and maintenance of roadways to allow for free travel. In exchange for so doing, citizens are bound by the rules that dictate how these collectively owned assets are to be utilized. Driving is a privilege, not a preordained human right. That is the cost of society, of technology, and of community. As has been said since at least the 1930s, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. They just quoted Tanstaffel in this. If one is unprepared by the laws and regulations that govern the privilege of driving, one can simply choose not to drive. I further dismiss the defendant's arguments on the basis that they are meritless and deserving of summary dismissal because they have no chance of success. One, that he's not Kenneth Cooper, but rather Tiberius or Tiberius Rex, and by changing his name, he's dissociated himself from the person charged with these offenses. I'm satisfied that the defendant is the one who is alleged to have committed the offenses. He admitted it in court. Two, that because the defendant's former name appears in all capitals in the information, and the name given by him to him by his mother was not so capitalized, somehow this has a bearing on the ability of the prosecution to pursue the matter against him. It does not. It is clear that the defendant was driving the Sprinter van on May 24th, 2020. He said in his evidence that he was, even though he called it traveling. It is equally clear and admitted by him that he was prohibited from driving the entire day of May 24th, 2020. Regardless of whether he was driving or Tiberius Rex was traveling, I find the defendant guilty of count 1, driving while prohibited. I will analyze the Crown's positions regarding counts 2 and 3. Spoiler, I think I know where this is going. Following which, I will review the defendant's arguments regarding defenses, as those submissions apply equally to both counts. So basically, I'm going to skip over a little bit here. The defendant testified that he was an unlicensed cigarette dealer. As such, none of the prescribed licensee exceptions apply to him. So the exceptions would be things like personal use and so forth. Nor do any of the exceptions for transport under prescribed circumstances apply. So skipping ahead a little bit here. There's a personal use exception, and that personal use exception is 5 units of tobacco products, and a unit of tobacco products consists of 200 cigarettes. So you can have 5 cartons. 5 cartons seems like a lot. 1,000 cigarettes. That seems like a lot. But the court goes on to note, very subtly, the defendant possessed 160,000 cigarettes, which is 159,000 cigarettes more than the prescribed limit. Judge, I love you. That's awesome. I heard no evidence that the defendant imported the cigarettes. Even if I had, the exception would not apply to the vast quantity of cigarettes possessed by the defendants. Finally, the due diligence defense described in Section 233 is inapplicable, as the defendant exercised no due diligence to prevent the commission of the offense. He simply considered himself not to be bound by laws, acts, or regulations pertaining to the possession of unstamped cigarettes. Wow, I'm noting people saying that a heavy smoker can go through that in a month? Dang. That's a lot of money. People saying 5 cartons would last me 50 days. That's a lot of money. I can't afford to be a smoker, and I'm a lawyer. That's crazy to me. Wow. Okay. That's a lot of cash. All right. I didn't realize people smoke that much. I've never been a smoker, you can tell. So count 3, they say that the offense is largely the same, and unlawful possession of tobacco is more than 1,000 grams that does not bear the prescribed mark or stamp, which is, absent evidence to the contrary, prima facie evidence that the tobacco is possessed for an illegal purpose. And none of the seized cigarettes bore any sort of tax stamp and was way over 1,000 grams. So let's get to his defense. His defense is that. And I see people noting they don't drink. That's fair, but I can tell you, I go through much less booze than that than that value of cigarettes. So how much is a carton of cigarettes? I'm just going to do some Googling on that. Cost of carton cigarettes, Canada. So the cheapest cigarette cartons in are in Quebec at just under $100. On average, $139, or can go up to $139. Some of them go up to $150. So I'm just thinking that's what, $500 a month? At the low end, if you guys are saying 5 cartons a month. I don't drink $500 a month in booze. I can tell you that. If I would consider myself to be really overindulging if I got anywhere near that. I could be drinking $1,000 bottle scotch and I would not go through $500 a month. Maybe I should start drinking $1,000 a bottle scotch. I see people saying, no, the value of what he has is $50 a carton. Okay. Yeah, people are saying $240 per carton in Alberta. And 5 cartons, that's $1,000 a month. More than. Huh. Yeah, that's insanely expensive. All right. See, depends on how fancy it is. You're not rackets or vices either. Yeah, I mean, I poured myself a glass midway through this stream and I'm still going through it. And I'm going to enjoy sipping this glass through the evening. But I like this. One of the most interesting advice regarding money I've ever seen. Budget is if you smoke, but instead of buying cigarettes, you just put away the money. I should try doing that. That's not a bad idea. All right. So the defendant submitted that he was entitled to possess the unstamped products because he was an unlicensed cigarette dealer. I've already dismissed this defense above. Additionally, the defendant characterized himself as non-status native and argued that this entitled him to possess unstamped tobacco in any amount he wished. He further argued that all of Canada is native land. As such, possession of these products anywhere in Canada is lawful. These defenses fall under the rubric of specious arguments that ought to be summarily dismissed. It is clear that the defendant was stopped on Highway 1 in an area that was not part of any designated First Nation reserve. I reject his argument that all of Canada is native land, and therefore he ought to be exempt from these charges. If I was to accept this argument, it would render the entire taxation scheme for tobacco products in British Columbia unenforceable. There would be no need for taxation stamps, as there would be no possession off reserved lands. Clearly, that was not the intention of the legislature in enacting the Tobacco Tax Act or regulation. It is a philosophical argument put forth for the purpose of shirking liability for these regulatory offenses. It is not a defense to the possession charges faced by the defendant. Similarly, the defendant baldly asserted that he was a non-status native without A, any explanation as to what that meant, or 2, how his claim of being a non-status native would impact his ability to possess the tobacco products. So, I'm guessing this guy's real white. That's my bet. I'm betting he's like about as indigenous as I am. Maybe less so, because I've had some indigenous people who called me like I was family. Um, I'm not indigenous at all, but yeah. I found no wording in the Tobacco Tax Act or regulation that referred to exemptions that exist for non-status natives, nor was I pointed to any enactment that would indicate such an exemption existed. Given prima facie evidence of unlawful possession, and pursuant to the operation of Section 982 of the Offense Act, without any basis to conclude that an exemption exists, I summarily dismiss the defendant's claims on the basis that they are devoid of merit. So far, all of his arguments are devoid of merit, except for one charter argument. I'm going to give this guy points. He won on a charter argument on that. And I will note this: tobacco is used for cultural purposes, unrolled that is. If you are visiting a reserve and you want to make a good impression, buying some unrolled tobacco, like just a pouch of tobacco, is a great way to do that. A real great way to get everybody to call you a dick is to go to the reserve and give somebody a bottle of wine or alcohol, because if you alcohol has had there's been a troubled relationship, but it's generally considered to be sort of bad luck or bad spiritual energy. And so going to somebody on a reserve and being like, here's a bottle of scotch, is kind of a jerk move in a lot of circumstances. But I can tell you, I have had some little old ladies on reserves some of whom were like proper elders. Some of them were just older women who were really like thrilled to receive a pouch of tobacco. It's just the sort of culturally sensible way to do it. So you don't want to give a gift that's not going to land well. All right. The defendant made a further claim that common law, or Caesar's law, as he called it, operated to overrule any rules enacted by government. Therefore, none of the acts or regulations he is alleged to have violated have any force or effect. I dismiss this argument as being simply untrue. I like how this guy comes in and brings this big argument and all of this. And the court's like, but you're wrong though. So no. And I see people noting nicotine addiction is one of the worst. Yes, although I can tell you that a lot of the people who receive tobacco when you give it to an elder are not necessarily smoking it. They might, for instance, be, instead of smoking it, they'll, for instance, give it as an offering when they're picking berries or hunting, that kind of thing. It's used in cultural ways other than just smoking it. And I see people noting, what is it? Caesar's been dead for a while. It's, yeah, exactly. When you harvest plants or animals, you give tobacco for an offering. Yep. Sort of a thank you to whatever sort of spirits are there. Thank you to the animal. Thank you to the plant. It's just respectful. Bring sage and cedar for smudging instead. No harmful side effects. That's fair. I can't say I'm an expert, but I try not to be a jerk. That's kind of the thing, is I try to give gifts that are not sort of jerk gifts, and alcohol is often in the category of jerk gift. All right. The defendant suggested that this prosecution was fundamentally unfair because in some circumstances, some exemptions apply for some people and not others. He used as an example the fact that individuals devoted to the Sikh religion do not have to wear helmets. Presumably, he was referring to Sikh individuals riding bicycles or motorcycles. The idea that because some people are validly exempted from the law, therefore all people should be exempted from the law, is intellectually unsound, patently false, and deserving of summary dismissal. The defendant's claim that his right to travel freely through the country was violated is also dismissed. His travel is subject to the rules and regulations that govern that form of travel, including the Motor Vehicle Act. Finally, the defendant's claim that since he did not consent to this prosecution, somehow it was unlawful, is summarily rejected. Such a claim is deserving of no further comment. It is not a valid use of taxpayer-funded resources to refute manifestly unsound, baseless conjecture. For the reasons above, I find him guilty of all three counts. Now, unfortunately, what I don't have is any sort of... I don't have what happened to him. I don't have his sentence. And that's unfortunate. I wish we had that at this point, but we don't. So, we'll just have to... we'll have to wait and see, but I suspect it won't get reported. I see a neti pot isn't a jerk gift. It might be a little jerky. I haven't mailed that yet. I got to do that, but I got to write up a card for that. Get that sent off. So, and this is a good point. I find that gifting cookies, no matter the culture, always lands. Yep. Food is usually a safe gift so long as you avoid like allergens and so forth. Even if you get somebody something they're allergic to, they're usually not pissed off by it. Has a sovereign citizen argument ever worked? Not that I really know of. There is a case, and this is not really the sovereign citizen argument working. It is the sovereign citizen managing to baffle gab his way into a defense. And basically what that was is he was charged with driving a license without producing a, any sort of IDs or anything like that. But he tried to hand the officers this, he was trying to hand the officer this stack of garbage, like this stack of sovereign citizen stuff. But because the officer didn't look through the stack of sovereign citizen stuff, what was noted was they just said, okay, well, it could have actually contained a driver's license and registration. And yeah, so now I'm just going to address this. All natives are drunks. Not at all. And that don't put that kind of crap in my mouth. That is not what I said at all. I said that within the culture, it is often considered to have like a negative energy, to have a negative connotation, and that giving alcohol can be insulting, including to people who have no issue with alcohol or anything like that. It's not related to that. It's just that by giving alcohol to somebody, it's like giving something unlucky. In some cultures, you don't want to give a knife as a gift. Same thing. That isn't because the culture has a problem with knives. It's just that it's not appropriate. So that's the important distinction there. We're not, you got to give gifts that fit with people's etiquette and culture. There's various other things that you wouldn't give to somebody in our culture. If I went and gave my wife like a weight loss product, I can tell you that I would be running away as fast as I could. It's not an appropriate gift. If you give your wife a cleaning, a piece of cleaning equipment, that's often considered an inappropriate gift. Let's say you're exchanging gifts at your workplace, and you decide that instead of the gift you're going to give your coworker is a toothbrush and toothpaste. I can tell you that coworker is going to have some opinions about you. Those opinions are F that guy. You gotta recognize what is and is not considered an acceptable gift within a culture, and give gifts that make sense. So, yeah. All right. So, at this point, we've been going for almost 4 hours, and I see this with knives, sometimes people give a symbolic coin so the person can buy it from them. Yep. Yeah, and some people recognize knives as more than acceptable. It's a cultural thing. I would be thrilled to receive a knife. Some other people not so thrilled to receive a knife, right? You gotta sort of see what the culture is and so forth. All sorts of things. I can say I got my wife a vacuum cleaner, but we talked about it first. Like that wasn't just like a hey honey, here's your Christmas gift. And I got a good vacuum. It's a gift for like the house, right? The house is going to get a gift. It's going to be a nice, thing. It's something we both use. So that's all it really means is as Anne just noted, read the room. Out of curiosity, why is a knife offensive? Is it a symbolic threat? In some cultures, the gift of a knife is viewed as cutting off the relationship. So it's kind of an insulting gift in the sense of saying like we are ending things. Just different, different practices in different places. All right, so we've been almost 4 hours. So I'm just, if anyone's got any last comments or last questions to get to, I'll answer those. Otherwise, we will roll the credits in just a moment here, and move on from there because there's a whole lot of stuff there, and yeah, I see. Who guys get the wife or the girlfriend a gift of a household helper? Invite your mom to stay for a month without telling her. Now, my mom is a sweetheart, but that would still maybe cause some strain. In Russia, you don't give a wallet unless it also has a small amount of cash. Yep. Black Rose, death in 24 hours. Ooh, that's nasty. Unless you give Rob an axe. I did give Rob an axe. Ian would be thrilled to receive a wood chopping sword. Just saying, I would. Is your back hurting? Yes, pretty much always. If you get given a knife here, you have to give them a coin. Otherwise, it's bad luck. Yep. So, yeah, lots of stuff there. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you, Jessica P. Thanks for another amazing stream, Runkle. Well, much appreciated. So, yeah, we will wrap this up here and see you guys next week. Yeah, where's that button? And button.